across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is Talk. A big thank you to Julie Harley-Brewer. What a fantastic show, as always. But let's look at what we have coming up in our show today. MPs have warned that Britain isn't ready to defend itself. A year-long defence inquiry says Labour is moving at a glacial pace amid rising threats from Russia and China. It has also been said that the UK has next to nothing in integrated air and missile defences, as well as a lack of planning to protect the homeland and overseas territories. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves will up-rate working age benefits by 3.8% from next April, adding £6 billion to the welfare bill. Critics note pass freezes, and Kemi Badenoch warns the welfare trajectory will bankrupt Britain. Labour has also ditched a £5 billion cut and is expected to lift the two-child cap, piling extra costs onto the Treasury and, most importantly, you, the British taxpayer. And finally, the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, that'll be gone soon, thank God, says flag displays are becoming, quote, a tool of division and intimidation. Emily Spurrell told the National Conference that surging St George's and Union flags, hangings on bridges and street furniture are sowing fear. Get a grip, love, is all I would say on that front. Well, I'm delighted to be saying that in the first half an hour of the show, we have a former Home Office Special Advisor, as well as a former DEFRA, that's Environment, Food, Rural Affairs, the woke stuff, Special Advisor too. He worked with Michael Gove, he worked with Priti Patel, he's now a political commentator, and he's joining me in the studio here, Mr. James Starkey. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me on, Jonathan.
Delighted to have you on, James. Well, look, Prime Minister's questions, you and I were tuning in, all about the economy, as we expected from Kemi Badenoch ahead of next week's budget, holding Sir Keir Starmer's feet to the fire about the fact that Rachel Reeves promised that the thresholds in where we start paying tax, whether that be at 20%, 40% or even 45%, would be unfrozen, and that would slowly creep up as of 2028. But after the U-turn on the initial manifesto commitment to not increase income taxes, then the U-turn on the U-turn, as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, to then actually say that we're not going to raise income tax, albeit this is all briefed by the Treasury, despite what Sir Keir Starmer was trying to claim. It now seems that the one way they're going to claw money is by continuing the freeze on thresholds, which Rachel Reeves said, in her own words, would hurt working people. Would this be a serious breach of a promise, again, from Rachel Reeves?
I mean, look, I think that promise was breached last year. I don't think, I mean, when they did the budget last year and they raised NICs, Employers' National Insurance, and they tried to claim, well, it wasn't on working people because the employers are paying for it, people saw through it. And if they didn't at the time, they saw in the months after that jobs were shedded in their tens of thousands. So I think they were on pretty shaky ground already. I mean, the U-turns on U-turns, I don't know about U-turns, it's more like they're going through Spaghetti Junction with the different policies they've got, because there's a new one each week. I think it's pretty well covered. I don't think we've ever seen a budget where we've seen so much of it leaked beforehand.
The Speaker even referred to it as the hokey-cokey budget in Parliament when he was telling off the government for all the leaks that have been going into the press.
Yeah, and that there's a kind of jokey side to that, as you can see at PMQs. It's good. It gives good fodder to the other parties. But there's a serious side. Businesses don't know where they are, and the economy can't afford that right now. You know, we've got the inflation statistics out today. It's come down, that's good news, but it's still nearly 2% above where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, down from 3.8% to 3.6%. So, but food inflation going up from 4.5 to 4.9%, which will be a worry for those when it comes to doing their food shops in the run up to Christmas.
People listening and watching, or you know, they'll be looking at their food bills and other bills, and they'll have seen them gone up over the last year. And so this kind of, the way they've approached the budget, it has a serious side to it. This is the economy they're supposed to be running.
You obviously, James, you work in the business world. You obviously have a number of clients that will be looking ahead of this budget. Are they feeling quite uneasy in terms of just how much has been briefed, unbriefed, U-turn, sort of hinted at? How serious is this causing the business world in terms of fear about what may or may not be coming through and how that may or may not impact them?
I think, so what I would say about the business world generally speaking is that at the last election, no offence to you and your former colleagues, I think after several years of kind of talk about hokey cokey. You had hokey cokey prime ministers.
No, it was very stable, James. It was very stable, strong and stable. I think Theresa May said.
One second, you had to kind of knock on the Downing Street door just to double check who was in there at any given time. But so I think after that, people felt like maybe we won't get everything that we want from a Labour government. They knew the workers' rights stuff was going to come. That was signalled before the election. I think it's fair to say business didn't love some of that, but I think there's the idea of stability. That was the thing which, if you spoke to business, and Reeves spent a lot of time before the last election engaging with businesses in these famous kind of smoked salmon breakfasts that she was having, I think people kind of thought, I don't know if I agree with everything they say and do, but at least we'll have stability. We had in the kind of 8 years before referendums and elections and leadership elections. Now that's kind of been blown out of the water. We went into Labour conference with Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor, openly challenging Keir Starmer to leadership. Well, today, a week before the budget, we've then got a Labour MP saying he's going to give up his seat so Andy Burnham can have another go. And that was after Downing Street themselves spending half of last week themselves briefing that their own health secretary was trying to take the job of the Prime Minister.
Well, so it's all stable though. Keir Starmer has done that Mirror interview, James, this week, where he's told the Daily Mirror, I will lead the Labour Party into the next election, so no one needs to fear about anything.
I think these are the kinds of things. It's like when you say to someone, like you say, hey, by the way, we're really getting on, we're really, really happy. If you have to tell someone that, you're probably not. So I think if you have to come out and say like, oh, I'm definitely, it should generally speaking be a given that a leader of a party that won a majority of 180 is going to fight the next election. The fact that the Prime Minister is having to do interviews, so I mean, this is also after a week after. I mean, we kind of brushed over it because so much stuff's happened. They had a leak inquiry within 24 hours, so we know the leak came from Downing Street.
By the way, the leak inquiry was ironically leaked.
It was ironically leaked, classic of the genre. But within 24 hours, the Prime Minister said, "Well, nothing to see here. Don't know where this is from."
In fact, he was assured that it hadn't come from Number 10. His officials had said to him, "It definitely didn't come from us."
So the leak inquiry apparently involved him asking people if they've leaked stuff, and them saying no, and then him telling the country, "Well, it's totally fine." And this is now how the country is being run.
Well, James, you mentioned earlier that in the last hour, Clive Lewis, the Labour MP for Norwich South, who, to be fair, is one of the first MPs to say the leadership has to change, at least on the record that is, has indeed said on another show this lunchtime that he is, quote, willing to give up his Norwich South seat with its 13,000 Labour majority to Andy Burnham, if that is the way of getting Andy Burnham in. Now, James, you know that area. As I say, 13,000 majority, but most listeners won't know that the interesting thing was the party that came second in that seat was the Green Party, where they saw a 13.5% increase in their vote share. We've seen Zach Polanski on the march of Labour's left. We see that he is, wherever people think of him, engaging, dynamic. He speaks like a normal person. He would certainly be able to grab a lot of headlines in an election. Do you think Clive Lewis's seat is as safe for Andy Burnham as Clive Lewis thinks, or do you think this is the Green Party will sniff an opportunity?
So I don't. I think, look, politics has changed a lot. Much like conventions in society. So I think, if you go back to the 70s, generally speaking, you kind of stuck with the person you were with. So if you started as a Labour voter at 18, you carried on monogamously and stuck with Labour. Now I think you have a kind of political polyamory where you'll see there's no kind of monogamy between the voter and the party. And so we saw this both for the benefit and the downfall of the Conservative Party. It benefited the Conservative Party in 2019 because they went from tiny, almost no majority to a huge majority, which you came in on, and the kind of conventional wisdom up until really the 90s, even the noughties with Blair, would have been you get a big majority and you kind of spend that capital, if you like, over a couple of elections, and it goes down and eventually you get booted out, and then the other major party, the Tories or Labour, comes in. That's not the case anymore. And so I think the reason that's important is when we look at by-elections, are there any seats now that we say that's a safe Labour or Tory seat? Now, me and you know a lot of Tories. I don't know a lot of Tory MPs who tell me they've got a safe seat.
No, I can't think of one seat.
And if they did tell me, I'd say that they were deluded, right? So I think there's that. So with Clive has a big majority. Clive is to the very much, which I think he wouldn't mind me saying, is to the far left of the Labour Party, which are the kind of traditional left party. And so if Burnham comes in and you parachute someone, no one likes people being parachuted in their
all the way from Manchester to Norwich. That is a journey.
And I think no one likes that wherever they are. So I think with Polanski leading the Greens, I reckon you would have a big fight on your hands in a by-election there.
And how embarrassing could that be for Andy Burnham, as well as obviously how embarrassing could it be for Keir Starmer, because they'll have to have photo ops side by side, pretending to be the best of friends, but everyone knows Andy Burnham's there to do one thing, which is to take Keir Starmer out of the top job. We have seen, amazingly, Labour seems to have not learnt any lessons from the last Conservative government. I feel like I'm living in 2022 when I read stories like this in the Times that says this new Tribune group, which is made up of 80 Labour MPs, it's sort of a rebranding it's gone through, has said that apparently they've got the letters, they've got the 80 signatures they need to formally challenge Sir Keir Starmer. You and I have heard that all before, James. They're touting around, which I'm sure these people will be delighted, Lucy Powell, Louise Haigh, Lisa Nandy as potential. This feels like if this were to happen, one of these ladies would be used as a stalking horse, because you're not going to see a Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner put themselves front and centre to be the one wielding the knife. They'll be the one who came in and went, I'm only here because the knife was wielded and someone's got to pull the ship back together. But we have got one of the group has said that their colleagues were living in cloud cuckoo land and warned that the public would not reward them for a destructive leadership challenge. Do you think this MP, whoever this is, has apparently learnt from the Conservatives between 2022 and 2024, whereas in maybe the majority of the others simply are living and forgetting the very near recent times that a leadership challenge is going to lead to bloody warfare, it's going to lead to cementing in factionality within their party, and ultimately will lead to one side of the party being very unhappy, grumbling more backbenches, more undermining, more rebellions, and the public will just go, you spent all your time talking about issues like Gaza and wealth taxes, not about the cost of living and not about reducing immigration.
I think people are fed up with these Westminster games, as they will see them. You know, parties spending their time, leadership plotting, and, you know, the letters thing, we've seen that in the Tory party. I mean, sometimes letters can even be withdrawn. But we've probably been involved in some way. I don't want to reveal what you were up to in the latter days of the Tory government, Jonathan. We've probably been involved in some ways of some of these stories about whether people have the 40 letters or the 80 that Labour would need to have a leadership challenge. I don't really buy that, to be honest, that you could keep...
Because they're not secret, they have to go on the record, don't they, these 80?
But I think me and you both know as well, in Westminster, once you start telling more than 7 to 10 people, everybody knows about it. So if they really have gone to more than 20, anything up to 80 people, then a lot more people would know about it on that. So that seems like someone's told a journalist, I've got the 80 letters, the journalist has thought, man, it's quite a good story, they're anonymous, I can't really check the other 79 people, so I'm just going to write it anyway. So I'm not to cast aspersions on whichever journalist felt that story. It is indeed a good story, interesting story. But it's not a secret that Keir's getting challenged. I mean, the Downing Street, I think they are kind of seeing shadows, but they're very much in the bunker. But Downing Street themselves think that they're getting a leadership challenge.
Openly briefing that they're prepared.
But you're absolutely right. You know, people wake up this morning, they'll see food price inflation. There'll be
petrol pump prices.
Maybe they've been on the phone to their doctors trying to get a GP appointment. Maybe they will have, in their local school, the RAC issues hasn't been sorted out, etc., and they'll be looking at their wage slip now, and maybe in a couple of weeks' time, and they'll be worse off with the taxes. Most people's cost of living, most people's standard of living has at best stayed the same for the past few years. And they'll read stories like this and think, what are you doing? Just over a year ago, we elected you because, let's not forget, Labour said to the British public, we're different. We'll do things differently. Look at this clown show, the Tory party. We'll come in and provide stability. We won't be corrupt. Well, they've lost, on average, about a minister every month through some kind of resignation.
Yes.
So, failed on that. We'll keep our promises. Failed on that in the first budget. Probably going to fail on it again in a week's time. We'll sort out the economy, but that doesn't look like it's going too good. I mean, the only kind of rough positive news story they've got is probably the NHS. where they have seen some inroads to the waiting lists, but that's minor, kind of still early days. But I think you should give them some credit from that. So yeah, I think the public would just think these people are, they should just get focused on their day job, which is making the country better.
Well, ladies and gents, I want you to focus on your day job, and that involves calling in, telling us that if Sir Keir Starmer remains as Prime Minister after next May, do you think that he's the man that could lead the Labour Party into the next general election? Do you want Sir Keir Starmer leading the Labour Party? Would a change of leader change your mind about Labour? What do they need to do to win you back? 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, WhatsApp us and voice note us. And you know I love a voice note. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, let's get into the fact that Britain apparently is not ready to defend itself. At the same time, we have a Russian spy ship in British waters. How fun.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon, welcome to the programme, welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you, this is Talk Breakfast, I'm Mark Dolan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis in for Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk. Still joined by my friend James Starkey in the studio where we're reviewing the news today. James, we've had this amazing report come out from the House of Commons Defence Select Committee that says that the Labour government's moving at a glacial pace. Britain's failing to meet its NATO Article 3 defence obligations. That's to maintain and develop individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. It also warned the country has, quote, next to nothing when it came to integrated air and missile defences. And we then find out from John Healey this morning there is a Russian spy ship in British waters, but he says if Russia wants to play games, we're ready. I mean, this is a bit farcical, isn't it?
It is. Look, I think for too long we've taken security for granted, is the truth. I kind of post the communist, kind of post the Berlin Wall coming down in the early 90s, you've seen across Europe, and this is where, whatever your opinion on Trump, he's right about the idea that the Europeans as a whole, and it includes the UK, have essentially relied on NATO, the US, and we've seen dwindling spending on defence forces, and that's across governments. That's the last Tory government, the Labour government before that. And so I think you've seen an armed forces that's been underinvested in for too long. And the results of that are, I mean, I don't know what the latest figures, you might know. I think, you did some of the armed forces stuff when you were an MP. But, right now, we couldn't deploy anywhere in the same we did as in Iraq. And we were a junior partner there.
We've got 70,000 fully trained soldiers in the British Army, which is its smallest size since the Napoleonic Wars. Yeah,
and I'm not an expert on the military. I spent a few years in Iraq working on a US military base. But what I do, and the basics are, it's not, you can't deploy that many people. You need a rotation. You can't have people just kind of sent, permanently. And you need people, and there's various missions in the world. The UK, the British Army will have things going on right now, peacekeeping forces, etc., training exercises. So that what you're able to deploy is a much smaller amount of the total fighting force that you've got, and you need the logistics to go with it. And we don't have enough. I'm pretty sure we couldn't do what we did, whatever your views on Iraq, but we wouldn't be able to deploy that number of troops that we did just kind of a decade and a half ago. So they need to be built back up, because it's quite clear that with America and with Trump in, he's not going to let us kind of have a free ride that we've had for the past couple of decades.
It is concerning when you say during the inquiry, Professor Peter Roberts, a leading military expert and fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, told MPs the public needed to know just how at risk they were due to Britain's lack of missile defence, when the UK has next to nothing. And General Lord Dannatt, the former head of the British Army, said the committee's report should act as a sobering, quote, wake-up call. The time to act is now. We are in the last chance saloon. And to be fair to Ben Wallace, former Defence Secretary under the Conservatives, he said both Conservative and Labour for a number of years have, as you say, basically not taken defence seriously. I know Labour always try and say, but we were spending more than 2.5% of GDP on defence under our last government. Well, that's because we had the Iraq and Afghanistan war. They always seem to leave that detail out. And despite Sir Keir Starmer making that 4%, I think it is, promise, we've seen some of the quite interesting things they've entered into that. So things like some of the green energy causes of Ed Miliband's is somehow part of national security, national defence, dealing with asylum and migration
critical infrastructure, I think.
A critical infrastructure. And I mean, on asylum, Shabana Mahmood, James, has had a week. I think she's pitching to be the most conservative Home Secretary in the last 2 decades. I joked with Labour people yesterday that maybe I need to dust off myself down and realise I should join the Labour Party, because Shabana Mahmood's putting me and the last Conservative government to shame, and I'm insanely jealous. But look, a lot of sceptical listeners and callers yesterday who said no matter what Shabana does, they will never fully believe Labour, because they never fully believe this will actually be fully enacted. They think her own party will do everything they can to scupper her. They should be bogged down in lawfare, and they don't buy it. But Shabana's adding more meat to the bone here, saying children born in the UK to refugee parents will also face deportation under her asylum crackdown. Officials said children would be required to leave the country with their parents if their refugee status was revoked. Lord Dubs, who came to Britain as a child after fleeing the Nazis, accused the Home Secretary of using children as a weapon. I mean, James, the question that Labour's going to face here if they try and do this is, one, you're already saying people can stay up to 20 years. I think you and I talked off air before we came on. Are you really going to tell an 18-year-old who maybe is, living in their own accommodation or attending university, are we going to kick them out? But also, if you're a signatory to the ECHR, Article 8, Article 8, Rights to a Family Life, how are you going to come over that when you're still a signatory of this, and Lord Hermer, the Chief Law Officer for the government, and Keir Starmer, the human rights lawyer Lovey, are both going to want to abide by those rulings?
Look, I think, so on the face of it, interesting that so Shabana's come out, she's got a lot of love from what would broadly be the right-wing press, or the people from the right, and you can see the biggest criticism that you've seen from Farage and Reform and the Tories is that she won't get this past her MPs. Not that it's bad policy, and a touch of, maybe this will be challenged in the courts. But the biggest criticism has been her own MPs won't deal with it. And we've seen that. I think there's well over 20 Labour MPs now that have publicly voiced some kind of comment that they don't like it, they're not comfortable
Just for
with
one
it.
you to chuckle, James, Kat Eccles, who's the MP for Stourbridge, Red Wall area, has accused ministers of trying to, quote, appease the electorate with dog whistles. I mean, normally quite a good idea to make the electorate happy, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I think that just dropping dog whistles in is meaningless. This is a major concern for people of all parties, which is why Labour are doing it. Frankly, it's about competence as well. I think for a lot of people are frustrated. There's an element of fairness, and they see, you're struggling to pay your food bills and go on holiday, and you see billions of pounds of taxpayers' money going into hotels. That's not fair. You see people jumping queues for housing, education, health. That's not fair. But I also think it's just a test of competence, and it was for the Conservatives, and they failed that test, frankly.
Yep.
And I think me and you would.
James, I got my backside handed to me because of our failure to handle immigration.
And I think it will be for Labour. And I don't think the public, by and large, will listen to Labour on anything else, on the economy, on the NHS, if they don't sort out immigration. Keir, it seems the pennies dropped later than you would like. Actually, under Blair, they generally did have quite right-wing Home Secretary Charles Clarke gave a pretty punchy Labour conference speech that I looked at.
The hostile environment designed under Labour?
Exactly. When I was working for Pretty, we looked at Charles Clarke's speech. And so, they had their issues to deal with. The older viewers and listeners will remember Sangatte on the French side, and people coming through the tunnel. That was a big issue, that we had illegal migrants coming through the Channel Tunnel, which required a lot of security. Lorries were then next, and we've seen sadly some deaths from that in recent times, but they were much more prevalent until we got to the small boats issue. So I think they've got to deal with it. I do also think you alluded to it, there's a lot of stuff that Shabana laid out, for example, penalising countries with visas who don't take back people we're deporting. That was actually from Priti Patel's bill. So questions for the Tories about why, when Priti brought that bill in and left the Home Office, subsequent people in the Home Office, some of whom are now quite vocal about people that came before them.
Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick.
I mean, you might know their names, but yes, that's who I'm talking about. They seem very kind of critical of other people, but these were things they didn't bother to do, and maybe they didn't know about them, or they were, too busy running or something, whatever they were up to, but or in immersion tanks. But so these are things that they've enacted, and Shabana's brought some new stuff. I think the 20-year rule. Listening to some lawyers yesterday, some cases on it, that seems open to challenge. I would say, if she's allowed to bring these reforms as she's laid out this week, backed by the Prime Minister, if they do get through Labour MPs, and I recognise there's a question over that, but if they do and they don't work, I think the obvious solution is going to be to leave the ECHR.
It's the only thing left on the table, right?
And that's where Reform are, and that's where the Conservative Party are, and that is not where the Labour Party is. And I would say there's pretty serious questions over whether a party led by human rights lawyer Keir Starmer and his Bezzy mate, Lord Hermer, another human rights lawyer, is ever going to do that. So I think the stuff we saw this week could have quite profound implications for some of the areas that the next election's fought on, which is now still more than 3 years away. But it could be quite impactful.
Well, look, James, thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. It's been Mr. James Starkey, former Conservative Special Advisor in the Home Office and Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Ladies and gents, what do you think? Do you buy what Shabana Mahmood is selling? Would you like to see her deporting children along with their families if they do not gain British citizenship? Do you believe it will ever happen? And do you think Britain is ready to defend itself? Do you feel confident and comfortable that this Labour government and the last Conservative government did enough to make sure we were prepared for any threats, particularly from countries like China and Russia? 0344 499 1000 is how you text us. How you WhatsApp us, voice note us and call us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. I'll see you after the break.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here in for Ian Collins of the Home of Common Sense. That is Talk. And in the last couple of hours this morning, we've had two quite big announcements when it comes to the defence of our realm here in the United Kingdom. First of all, the House of Commons Defence Select Committee, led by a Labour chair, came out with a report that said that this government was moving at a, quote, glacial pace in the face of renewed threats from Russia and China. It also claimed that Britain was failing to meet its NATO Article 3 defence obligations to maintain and develop individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. And it also warned that the country had next to nothing when it came to integrated air and missile defences and lacks a plan for defending the homeland and overseas territories. Warning MP said that they could not, the government that is, could not bury their heads in the sand any further. Well, we had that first of all, and then we had from John Healey, the Defence Secretary, this rather amazing announcement this morning.
As I speak, a Russian spy ship, the Yantar, is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland, having entered the UK's wider waters over the last few weeks. This is a vessel designed for gathering intelligence and mapping our undersea cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and RAF P-8 planes to monitor and track this vessel's every move, during which the Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. That Russian action is deeply dangerous, and this is the second time this year that this ship, the Yantar, has deployed to UK waters. So my message to Russia and to Putin is this: we see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
Well, we were delighted at this morning's breakfast show with Jeremy Kyle to have the Labour MP, who is the chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tandesi, tell this to Jeremy.
We should be sounding the alarm that as things stand, we are not ready, we are not prepared, and we need to make sure that the government isn't just moving at a glacial pace. It needs to make sure that it is complying with, for example, the Article 3 of NATO, our obligation to maintain and develop our own capabilities to resist an armed attack.
So very sadly there, hearing mixed messages this morning. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by the Shadow Defence Minister, a former colleague of mine. His name is Mark Francois, MP, a good friend of ours here on Talk, and he's joining me down the line now. Good morning, Mark. Oh, good afternoon, sorry, Mark. How are you?
Good afternoon, John. I'm well. It's great to see you. It's good to see you looking well.
Oh, you're very kind, Mark. You're very kind. Look, Mark, you are one of the rare beacons of light and one of the rare people, I think, who have serious credibility when it comes to defence, because you consistently, under Labour, but also under the last Conservative government, were very clear that not enough was being done when it came to the defence of our realm. How concerned are you by what we've heard, not just from the Defence Select Committee today, saying that Britain is not ready, but we've heard also from the Defence Secretary that we have Russian spy ships in British waters?
Thank you, Jonathan. It's true, I served on the Defence Committee for 7 years under Conservative governments, and I was always arguing that we should take the threat more seriously. So I'm very pleased to read this report this morning, although it has worrying conclusions, as you say. It's an all-party committee. It has a Labour chairman in Tandesi. And this is a real wake-up call. And if I could just read you one quick paragraph from it. It says the UK lacks a plan for defending the homeland and overseas territories with little progress on the Home Defence Programme. And it then says the proposed Defence Readiness Bill, which is legislation to improve our readiness, vital to empower government to the event of crisis or conflict, has not yet been written. Now, one of the reasons that we're not as ready as we should be is, and this is Labour's fault, I'm afraid, is they brought in, they keep talking about increasing defence spending. Most of that doesn't kick in for 2 years. In this financial year, in 25-26, they brought in a massive cuts exercise, would you believe, £2.5 billion of efficiency savings. So that's cuts in pub English from our armed forces. So that is what Labour are doing. And this report by a committee with a Labour chairman is warning against that. Now, on the Yantar, this is a very serious development. This is a spy ship. It's been in our waters before, but the fact that it has fired lasers, apparently, at an RAF aircraft that was sent to shadow it is a hostile act. So there is John Healey, as the Defence Secretary, he has to choose his words carefully, saying that if the Yantar continues south, we will act. Now, he deliberately hasn't told the Russians in advance what that will mean, but I take it to mean we will not allow that ship to carry on doing what it's just been doing.
Mark, if there were, God forbid, any further involvement or interaction with this Russian ship, if it continued to act, as you say rightly, in a hostile manner, do you have confidence that the British Armed Forces, that is obviously our Army, Navy and our RAF, are all able to deal with such a threat? You and I both know, particularly you, but I was proud to serve on the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme. The brave men and women aren't the problem. It's about whether they've got enough of them, perfectly frank, in their ranks, and of course they've got the necessary equipment that they need. But are you confident that Britain is safe?
Well, it's a timely question, because last night we have special forces who are trained to deal with these sorts of situations. But last night in the House of Commons, Labour used their majority to pass the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, which will allow for the restarting of a conveyor belt of endless investigations and re-investigations against our veterans, particularly those who have served in the special forces. So that's why last week, 8 generals and an Air Chief Marshal, retired, wrote an extraordinary letter to the Times protesting vehemently against this. In their words, not mine, Labour's proposals were a direct threat to national security. Now, it's moved on. The Prime Minister's questions today, David Davis, who the world knows previously served in the SAS, told the House that the SAS Regimental Association are now so concerned about this, they've issued what's called a pre-action letter to the government, telling them that if they proceed with the bill, against the advice of the generals, against the advice of the Conservative Party, against the advice of the veterans, they will take legal action. So we could end up with a situation, I'm serious, where the SAS sue the government.
I mean, this is...
You know, how on earth do we end up in a situation where you've got 9 retired 4-star officers telling the government that they're wrong, but Hilary Benn, who is the equivalent of, Lenin's wise fool, knows more about the armed forces and their morale and the welfare of our veterans than 9 retired generals? And how on earth do we end up in a situation where the Regimental Association of the Special Air Service is threatening to sue the government? You could not make this up.
Well, Mark, I'm glad you raised last night's legislation, because for listeners, this might sound a bit techie, but hopefully they'll stick with me here. Obviously, I was a parliamentary private secretary to Brandon Lewis, who was at that time the Northern Ireland Secretary. We, as a Conservative government, which you were part of, or we were all part of, Mark, as Conservative MPs, were introducing that Northern Ireland Legacy Act in order to draw a line in the sand. Now, for listeners' sake, my job was to aid the Secretary of State by engaging with MPs most engaged. You, Mark, were one of them, alongside David Davis. We did an extraordinary amount of meetings back and forth to make sure you were rightly ensuring the detail was right, and that there would definitely never be another British soldier in their latter years dragged to Northern Ireland to face vexatious claims when IRA terrorists were given their letter by Tony Blair, making sure that they were able to walk off scot-free. So I want to thank you again, Mark, and I know it's techie, but it's important that listeners understand it. It matters to me because my own stepmother was involved in part of the peace process and actually had death threats from the IRA, despite being a Republican and despite having a former family member of hers serve as an Irish nationalist member of Parliament. So it just goes to show just how vile the IRA are in who they're willing to target because people wanted to bring about peace. Mark, do you agree with me that what Labour did there, because I know some listeners, this might just seem like a Northern Ireland legislation, like what does it matter? Well, as you rightly said, Labour came in, they ripped up an act that meant that the history of the past could be left in the past and that soldiers can move forward. They immediately got rid of that and now introducing legislation that will see British soldiers ripped back to court. Is this one of the biggest desecrations and disrespects to our armed forces, those who have served and continue to serve? And do you think this will have a really negative impact on future recruitment?
And retention, yes, of course it will. And thank you for talking about the role that we played. IDS and in fact, Owen Paterson, for the record, were also very involved in those discussions. And we fought for 4 years to get that bill brought in. It was designed to try and draw a line under the Troubles. It was based, in fact, in large part, on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, do you believe? So that legislation, still on the statute book at the moment, protects these veterans from endless reinvestigation. I mean, I once raised with Theresa May when she was Prime Minister, you might have been in the chamber at the time, that they were even going after Chelsea pensions.
Yes.
I mean, do you remember? A chap called David Griffin, who fortunately in the end they dropped it. But this is the extent to which Republicans were prepared to go. So what Labour are doing is shameful. It's militarily mad. We've even got allies like the United States and the French saying to us, what on earth are you playing at? Your special forces, the SAS, the SBS, the Special Reconnaissance Regiment, are world class. They're on a par with Delta and the Green Berets and the others, and now we're undermining them. And when you think it through, and some of the generals have made this point, but I'll have a go at it too, why would you, in the Special Forces, want to take on terrorists, maybe take split-second decisions in a firefight with bullets coming at you, knowing in the back of your mind that 50 years later, you might end up in a courtroom on a charge of murder? So, that is what Labour are facilitating. Hillary Benn is a wise fool, as Lenin would have said, or maybe drop the wise bit. And we are putting our soldiers at risk. So here we've got a report. It's warning us about threats to our national security. It's a wake-up call. It's telling us to take it seriously. We've got a Russian spy ship off the coast of these islands firing lasers and RAF aircraft. What's the government's response? They're undermining the SAS. You could not make it up.
Very powerfully said, Mark, and I want to give you credit again. I don't think people realise just how you and Ian Duncan Smith, as you say, a good friend of ours as well, were working on this, and as you say, Owen Paterson too. I remember, Mark, 9 p.m, just after voting, putting me into a side room. I think we left at 10:30 after going through line by line aspects of the bill that Mark still wasn't happy with. I never had so many conversations with lawyers and with Mark Francois in my life, but you know what? It was one of the greatest honours of my life. It was one of the most important pieces of legislation I felt we put down in that last Parliament. I am deeply troubled and saddened to see it so egregiously undermined, because as you, Mark, I live still in Staffordshire, served Stoke-on-Trent. There's a large amount of Staffordshire regiments served in Northern Ireland, and there are a lot of veterans I met who are petrified that someone's going to come knocking on their door in their latter years, some of whom have got serious health conditions, and be threatened with potentially spending the rest of their days in prison, whilst they know the terrorists who came for them will never see a day in prison.
But to be fair, John, you were very integral to that too, and your former constituents and the members of the Staffordshire Regiment should know that. You were a driving force. Although you've exaggerated slightly. I think from memory you got out of there at about 10:20. It wasn't quite half.
Mark Francois, Shadow Defence Minister and Conservative Member of Parliament, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard what Mark Francois has to say. Do you think Britain is ready to defend itself from a potential Russian or Chinese attack? How do you feel about hearing that the House of Commons Defence Select Committee says that Britain is moving at a glacial pace and is failing to meet its NATO Article 3 obligations? How do you feel about the fact that Northern Ireland veterans in this country could potentially be back facing court procedures soon? I'm pretty bloody angry about it, I'll tell you that. 0344 499 1000 is how you can WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the starting message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, it's your texts and calls.
breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here, sitting in for Ian Collins on the home of common sense, that is Talk. And our question to you still is the same as it was earlier. If Britain does go to war, could we defend ourselves? This comes off the back of the fact that the Defence Secretary, John Healey, today said that there has been a Russian spy ship in British waters, and that when the RAF fighters were sent to scout it out, lasers were fired, which is a hostile act, and has said that if that ship continues to head south, quote, we will act. This is a very tense time indeed. But how do you feel? Well, 0344 499 1000 is how you can text and call us. 87222 is how you text us with a talker starter message, and of course message and follow us on X at talkTV. Obviously before then we talked about Shabana Mahmood saying that children born in the UK to refugees could face deportation if their parents haven't been able to get British citizenship. We've also discussed the fact of the state of the economy, that Rachel Reeves potentially is looking at spending another £6 billion more on benefits, as well as Sir Keir Starmer in Prime Minister's questions not ruling out the continuing freeze on tax thresholds that could drag millions more people, particularly into that higher tax band, that 40p tax band, which kicks in at £50,200, if memory serves me correctly. We've had texts coming in saying, who's going to fight for this country when they, the government, are letting veterans getting sued? The military personnel are also leaving. This is Richard in Ayrshire. We have battalions of young men of fighting age strategically positioned in hotels and barracks across Britain, ready to fight bad man Putin. We don't need air defences when we've got all of them, referring obviously to mass migration. Rick in Lincolnshire. Shabana Mahmood's policy is way too weak. I personally want zero immigration on both illegal and legal, and everybody that comes in the last 20 years deported if they don't contribute to the economy. And Alan from Doncaster, is the government mobilisation plan up to date? When was it last checked and updated? If an international threat arrives next week, what plans do they have to mobilise the country and its people and its industry? Fair questions that needs asking there. On defence, this is from Lucy. Shame on this government failing in its primary duty to keep the country safe, all the while welcoming ashore half the world. It happens to be incredibly difficult for able men to get into the army, often for administrative reasons by capita. One wonders what this awful administration really wants for this country. I shudder to speculate. Well, let's go to some of our callers. We have Matt in Cheshire. We were talking earlier with James Starkey about the fact that Sir Keir Starmer could well face a challenge soon. A group of 8 Labour MPs say they have the 80 signatures necessary in order to trigger such a contest. Andy Burnham is one of those being touted to potentially take over from Sir Keir Starmer. But Matt, how are you, sir? And what's your view on Andy Burnham?
Hi, good afternoon, Jonathan. I'm genuinely sick to the back teeth of hearing how Andy Burnham is this great alternative to Keir Starmer. And if you live in Greater Manchester, you see no evidence of anything that Andy Burnham has done anywhere in any social strata. If you're a foreigner or an immigrant or a student in the centre of Manchester, you can more or less do what you want. It's like a free socialist free-for-all for drugs, for campaigning, and the city's falling apart. It's an absolute dump. But where his little business friends are, where they're building all the new towers, where they all frequent, the Gary Nevilles and such, that's the little bit of that's the only thing he's done in Manchester, is allow a few corporations to build a few towers. But the rest of Manchester is falling apart, and Greater Manchester has been neglected. every part of it.
Well, there's Matt there. Thank you for your call, Matt. So I just want to make sure I get another caller in before the end of this hour. Matt saying Andy Burnham is not the solution to Labour's problems, nor the country's problems. We've got Andrew in Hertfordshire who wants to discuss defence spending. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Lovely to hear it. A lot of neck to that. I really was impressed by that. That Northern Ireland Act that Blair is horrific.
Sorry, Andrew, just to let you know, the signal sadly is very crackly. We are going to call you back, so I really do want to make sure that we get you down the line, so I appreciate your kind words there. Let's just read out a few more texts whilst we're waiting to get Andrew back. Afternoon, Jonathan, it's sickening that veterans such as the highly decorated Al Khans, Mike Tapp and Dan Jarvis can comfortably represent a government that are taking a giant dump on Northern Ireland veterans. They should be ashamed of themselves. That is from Barry there. And why can't I... And another one, I can trace my family back to the Battle of Culloden. After PMQs today, I feel excluded by my country, this disloyal government and the Prime Minister in particular. We are only needed for tax purposes. That is from Mick. And another one here. Of course, dependent children should be deported with their parents and definitely not used as an argument to overturn the correct deportation decisions that the parents have no right to be in this country. What's all the lovely fuss about? We've got Chris in Bournemouth ready to talk about defence as well. Hello, Chris. How are you?
How are you doing? All right?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
Right.
What do you think about the what you've been hearing today about the state of the defence of our nation?
I think it's a disgrace, to be quite honest. I mean, we've got soldiers in this country. OK, they're not serving soldiers as is at the moment, but can be brought back into service if required. And instead of Mr Starmer and his Chancellor spending money after money after money, paying for hotels for immigrants, how about putting it towards the defence budget to protect this country and not give it away to immigrants?
Well, I'm sorry there, Chris. Sorry, the signal was dropping out there, but I heard your point there that you were making about where money should be going. Blimey, the mood out there is very angry, and rightly so. And by the way, I do ask everyone to tune in to that Northern Ireland Veterans Bill that this Labour government's bringing back in, undermining the Legacy Act that was brought under the last Conservative government, which I, yes, was involved in as a parliamentary private secretary to the then Secretary of State, Brandon Lewis, which was designed to make sure that our veterans would never face another day in court, that Northern Ireland would be able to move forward rather than looking backwards. But sadly, I'm sad to say, this wasn't to be the case. Oh, hello, Chris. You still on there with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, Chris. Carry on. Sorry, apologies.
As for this bill that's going through Parliament at the moment, or wherever it's going through, where they are getting the soldiers back into court in Northern Ireland, it shouldn't be the soldiers that are going back to court. It should be Keir Starmer going to court for treason.
Well, Chris, I think you speak very powerfully, and a lot of people, and thank you for your call, will be feeling the same way as you. Well, look, after the break, we'll be talking with a good friend of ours here on Talk, Mr. Gawain Towler, the party board member for Reform UK, going over today's news stories to get their perspective. You know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us the word talk at the start of your message, and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Go and treat yourself to a brew. Go and get yourself a bicky. And we will see you very soon after this ad break.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis in for the great Ian Collins. I want to show we've had so far. You've heard from Mr. James Starkey talking to me earlier about Prime Minister's questions, talking about the fact that Shabala Mahmood has moved the dial so much that maybe, if this fails, therefore the only solution left is to leave the ECHR. But would this Labour government ever want to do that? Of course, we've also had Mark Francois on pointing out the dreadful Northern Ireland legislation that's being put through this House of Commons right now and what that could mean for our brave Northern Ireland veterans. But coming up, MPs have warned that Britain isn't ready to defend itself. A year-long defence inquiry says Labour is moving at a glacial pace amid rising threats from Russia and China. It has also been said that the UK has next to nothing in integrated air and missile defences, as well as a lack of planning to protect the homeland and overseas territories. Also, Rachel Reeves will uprate working age benefits by 3.8% from next April, adding £6 billion to the welfare bill. Critics note pass freezes, and Kemi Badenoch warns the welfare trajectory will bankrupt Britain. Labour has also ditched a £5 billion cut and is expected to lift the two-child benefit cap, piling extra costs onto the British taxpayer. And the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners says flag displays are becoming a tool of division and intimidation. Emily Spurrell, the only tool line they seem to know right now, told the National Conference that surging St George's and Union flag hangings on bridges and street furniture are sowing fear. Get a grip, love. Seriously, get a grip. Well, let's get to our next guest. He is a good friend of ours here on Talk. He is one of the best and most consistent voices in the Reform Party movement. His name is Mr. Gawain Towler, former Director of Communications for the Brexit Party and for Reform UK. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very well indeed. Good to see you, John.
Good to see you too, my friend. Now, Gawain, I'm keen to get your view. Shabala Mahmood has been auditioning, some are jokingly saying, in fact, Reform UK is saying themselves, to become a member of Reform UK. The rhetoric has been quite extraordinary this week from a Labour Home Secretary, probably some of the most right-wing rhetoric from a Home Secretary I've seen in the last 20 years, which is shameful for the Conservatives.
Since David Blunkett.
Well, since David Blunkett, absolutely. Now, it turns out that she's claiming, Gawain, that children born in the UK to refugee parents, so those who have not obtained British citizenship, will face deportation too, even if they're born in the United Kingdom. Officials say children will be required to leave the country with their parents. Lord Dubs, who came to Britain as a child after fleeing the Nazis, accused the Home Secretary of using children as a weapon. Steve Reid, the Housing and Community Secretary, said, "We know that we need more safe and legal routes so that families who have the right to come here and seek asylum can get into the country, but we cannot continue to allow incentives to exist that result in children drowning in the Channel." We've also seen, Gawain, I'm sure, a Reform UK target seat in Kat Elkels in Stourbridge, who's accused ministers of trying to appease the electorate with dog whistles. Well, first of all, Gawain, I think it's always a good thing to make your electorate happy. And secondly, are you buying what the Home Secretary's selling? Do you believe we're going to ever see any of this actually come into fruition?
Well, there's a number of problems with it. What I'm describing is Mahmood music. The rhetoric is great, the rhetoric's fine. I've got no problem there. But then you look at the reality. One of the realities is it has to get through the House of Lords. Not only does it have to pass it through her own backbenchers who will rebel en masse, but also she'll have to get it through the House of Lords. And because this is not a manifesto commitment, the traditional, what's called the Salisbury Convention, will not apply. The House of Lords do not feel duty-bound to pass this legislation because it is not a manifesto commitment. And first, of course, they've got to have the legislation. Rhetoric is one thing, legislation is another. Then you have the problem of the courts, judicial review, the lawyers are licking their lips and rubbing their hands, the amount of good, solid wonga that's going to come their direction from all the court cases challenging this. Then you have to look at the concept of safe country. Who decides what's safe? It isn't the government, it's going to be the courts. What kiboshed the Rwanda plan wasn't the Labour opposition, it was the courts, because they decided that Rwanda was not safe. And I posit you this suggestion. If, for example, you were Jewish and you went to, say, Germany and broke the law there, and the Germans wished to deport you to the UK, I'm pretty sure you could apply to the courts in Germany saying that the UK was not a safe country. after the murders at this Manchester synagogue, after the hate marches, after everything else that's going on in this country. So if the UK could be argued not to be a safe country, could you tell me a country in the world that could be argued was under ECHR Human Rights Act? So for the Home Secretary to say once their country is deemed safe, they can go back, I think is a can of worms so large I'd drown in it.
Well, it's interesting you say this, Gawain, because a number of listeners, I was astounded yesterday, were saying some of the rhetoric they liked, but they mostly said, we don't believe it, and if we do believe it, we'll only believe it when we see it. And the scale of which Labour would have to reduce the votes basically to zero, the scale at which they'd have to deport people, which is basically everyone who's come here illegally, only then would they be willing to maybe give some credit to Labour. And as you say, whilst we are signatories to the ECHR, whilst we still retain the Human Rights Act, I agree with you, the lawfare that's going to take place over this, particularly because the lefty lawyers who thought Labour were their mates are going to be even more enraged.
Can you imagine people sort of gang rushing the planes, as they did before, when that fellow was going to be deported to Jamaica, and the demonstrators on the plane kept the plane on the ground, and he was not deported. He went on, of course, to commit further crimes. So the Labour Party, the Labour movement, the left have created a situation where even a sensible piece of legislation, if they manage to draft it and put it on through the House, will be opposed at every single stage by their own people. The only chance they've got of getting it through the House of Commons is with the backing of Kemi and the Tories and others, because their own rebellion will be so large. This will drive more and more people into the arms of people like Zach Polanski and his, frankly, bizarre collection of weirdos on those groups. But they have. I mean, people accuse Farage of being populist. Oh, by gum, this is populist. This is Shabana Mahmood and the Labour front bench, or at least some of them, saying stuff. Oh no, it's just the national interest. It's got nothing to do with those opinion poll ratings.
No, of course not.
They are saying something that they believe is popular, even if they don't believe they can carry it out. That, to me, is the definition of populist. At the same time, you have her own backbenchers that you mentioned saying things like, it is not the job of the government to appease the people. What is the job of the government? Other than to actually do what the people want.
Well, you're right to point out about Shabana Mahmood, Gawain. We know that she signed letters when in opposition to keep foreign national offenders from being deported back to Jamaica, and as you say, some of whom went on to commit other crimes. There's also that extraordinary video where she was saying there should be an amnesty for all those who are in this country illegally.
Well,
and in fact, there's
believed in an amnesty, by the way.
And then we also saw, I think, Gawain, a video footage of her actually out in Greece, again, whilst a backbench MP, when boats started arriving from Northern Africa into Europe, and was basically saying these people were victims and they were fleeing and they should be looked after. It's quite the conversion, isn't it?
Well, many people convert when they hit the Home Office. I believe Robert Jenrick did too. It's one of those things. You go to the Home Office and come out almost a more human person, mainly because the rest of the people in the Home Office seem to fail to react to any form of humanity. They're technocrats to their very eyebrows. The fact is that she is looking down the barrel of an electoral gun, and that electoral gun is fashioned by reform. And they have to respond or they are toast. But if they bend reform ways here, the only option is to bend very much left in other areas, which is why you're hearing these things from Rachel Reeves about whacking up the welfare bill. So we either bankrupt ourselves or change our society completely. That's the choice Labour has decided to do.
Now, Gawain,
that is no choice for this country.
Gawain, Nigel Farage has made it clear Reform UK will not support this legislation, but as you said, Kemi Badenoch has said that she is willing to lend Conservative votes.
He didn't quite say that in the press conference yesterday. What he said was, we haven't seen the legislation. I'm not going to say here and now I'm going to support a piece of legislation that I literally have not seen. It is weird of a party leader to give a blank check, the leader of the opposition to give an electoral blank check to the government on a piece of legislation they have not seen. This is, again, populism. Farage is being pragmatic. He's saying, I'm not going to agree to it until I've seen it.
But I will say... I will say this, Gawain. Nigel Farage was also clear there were many aspects that he liked what he was hearing. As you say, he said he'll believe it when he sees it, but he also then pointed out, as you've kept saying, whilst you retain to be a signatory of the ECHR, you will not be able to get it done. I mean, the fact that Shabana Mahmood says that she'll be able to deport people, even children, but you and I both...
Do you remember, beginning of mid-last year, there was that instance where a child had been abused and the police went in to take the child away, just one child. 3 police vans turned up, 20-odd police people turned up, and they were kept out by a local mob of locals. Can you imagine this government with this college of policing and with these police chiefs having the sheer spine to be able to carry out the deportations that Shabana Mahmood is promising today? Can you believe it's going to happen? I don't, because the political will isn't there. Even if they pass this legislation, they will cave, they will cave, they will cave.
Well, talking about policing, Gawain, you and I, I'm sure, will be banging our heads off the desk here. Emily Spurrell, chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, told a national conference that the surge in St George's and Union Jack flags being hung on lampposts, motorway bridges and street signs across the country are sowing fear and fueling division. She said, flags are an expression of our identity and proudly fly outside our police buildings, but when they're used to provoke fear or assert dominance, they become tools of division. This is not free expression. That is intimidation. She's just talking about the cobblers, isn't she, Gawain?
Well, I do feel that whilst the flags themselves are just a symbol of who we are, that there is a little bit. And I put it in a slightly crude fashion. Those flags, as you go down the roads of this country, in towns and cities and villages across these islands, you see these flags. I've seen them in Wales, I've seen them in Scotland, seen them even in Ireland, by the way. What I see is people asserting who they are. They have been ignored and held in contempt by the political classes, those in authority, for far too long. And this is people merely saying, by the way, this is our land, and you must begin to listen to us. Now, it's a little bit like a dog peeing on the trees to assert that this is his territory. But I tell you this, as I drive up and down the country, as I do, when I go past these flags, they make me smile every time I go past them. Absolutely. And they make me smile for 2 reasons. One, because it is an assertion of national identity. It is an assertion of who we are and the fact that the authorities must listen. But the other thing is knowing that in the car driving next to me, there could be somebody, a member of the lanyard classes, absolutely hating it. And that makes me smile even more.
Oh, I agree with you, Grain. And then finally, Grain, isn't it amazing we're seeing that Sir Keir Starmer's now doing interviews telling us he'll definitely lead Labour into the next election? That's not normally a good sign when Prime Ministers have to tell the press that in order to get their MPs on side.
One wonders. There was some commentator on Twitter was talking about questioning the media strategy of Number 10, and one has to ask the question if the word strategy is relevant. Mahmood does something that is actually quite popular. Even Farage says it's quite sane in many of the respects. And what does Starmer do? Attempt to blow it out of the water by talking about his own vulnerabilities. Bizarre.
No, well, out of interest, Gawain, obviously we've got this group, the Tribune Group. I mean, what a weird name that is. But OK, 80 Labour MPs apparently have got...
It's a very traditional, old-fashioned group. It's been there for a long time.
Fair enough. Well, they say that there's 80 ready to sign. They've Lucy Powell, Louise Hager, even Lisa Nandy. I suspect they're stalking horses to try and just take Sir Keir Starmer out, or names being floated to...
Clive Lewis is considering standing down.
Well, yes, now we've got... I was about to say this. So Clive Lewis, the Labour MP for Norwich South, 13,000 majority. The Greens came second with a huge vote share increase there. In the last general election. Out of interest, Gawain, if Andy Burnham were elected, or if Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting or even Shabana Mahmood were to take over their party, do you think that could cause problems for reform? Are you riding high because Sir Keir Starmer is so unpopular?
No, we're riding high because the Tories are rubbish and Labour are challenging them at speed. I don't think it matters which which sort of homunculus sits on the top of the tree, as to the rubbishness of the tree. I don't think they have backed themselves into more corners than a dodecahedron. It just seems to me that it doesn't really matter, because the problem they've got is they can't do anything. Their backbenchers are refusing to play ball. They're refusing to see reality. They prefer to live in a dreamland where the magic money tree keeps on growing. Andy Burnham, the great, dare I say, white hope from Manchester, send him to Norwich. He's not as hot as mustard, but at the same time, he thinks that the bond market is irrelevant. You can see what the international global financial markets would do if Andy Burnham became leader.
Yes,
and it wouldn't be nice.
No, it wouldn't be nice.
Experience. I mean, I think Burnham would last less than a single lettuce leaf rather than a whole cos.
Graham Towler, thank you so much for joining us today. Graham Towler, Reform UK Party board member and former Director of Communications for them too. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about what Graham has to say? Do you think that Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, Shabana Mahmood or Wes Streeting could be a threat to reform? Do you think Shabana Mahmood will actually deliver on the promises that she's making to even deport children who were born in this country but whose parents are refugees and have not gained refugee status? Do you think that police chiefs are right when they say St George's flags are tools of division, or do you think they're just the tools? 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp, how you call us and how you voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message, and you can follow messages on X at talkTV. I'll see you after the break.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's me, Jonathan Gullis, in for the great Ian Collins here of the home of common sense. That is Talk. Well, I want to hear from you, the listeners, now with your calls, your questions. And the big question I've still posed to you today that I want you to call in on, if the UK were to declare war, would we be ready? Can we defend ourselves? Yes or no? 0344 499 1000 is how you make sure you WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you can text in with the word talk and start a message. And of course you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Jill in Cornwall has some views about the idea that flags are divisive, according to police chiefs. Jill, hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Well, I wouldn't use the word divisive. What I think is that at the moment, the people in this country feel threatened. You know, we've got a government that aren't listening to anything that people are saying. We've got the place being flooded with people that we don't know. We don't know what their intentions are. I mean, I'm not saying they're all bad, but there are bound to be some amongst them that don't want anything good to happen to this country. And I think that the person that lives in this country loves the country and loves who we are. And the flags are just a way of saying, you know, you may not listen to the words that we're shouting, but we are happy that we are who we are. And my husband, he's ex-military, and
thank you for his service.
Always puts flags up on like Remembrance Day, or when his unit has some sort of celebration, he puts flags up. And it's amazing how many people. I mean, I live out in the sticks, as someone said, and it's amazing how many people will knock on the door and say, "Oh, we love the flags. We're glad to see them." I think it's just a way for people to sort of try and voice an opinion that the government and the politicians of this country don't seem to be listening to.
How do you feel, Jill, when you hear the fact that we have the smallest army we've had since the Napoleonic War? 70,000 is all we have left in our British Army. I mean, as you say, your husband has served. Yeah. Is it embarrassing that a country like ours has left ourselves so vulnerable?
Well, yes, because we have always thought of this country as having a fantastic military. You know, they're hard fighters, they work hard, they've always done this country really well, looked after this country, and the fact that they're now... well, they're ignored. Yep. And the thought that they're living on the streets, they have no homes. Some of them have come out after serving the country and they have nowhere to go, no homes, no sort of help to get back on their feet or anything like that. And yet we're feeding people that have never contributed to this country at all. In fact, they may come from a country that has wished this country the worst thing ever. So I am horrified that I think that there are people that will still fight to protect this country, yes. But it's whether or not we have enough people to feel like that and work for this country. That's something else.
Thank you so much, Jill from Cornwall, for your call. We go to Scott, who is in Leicester, who wants to talk about defence too. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Hello, Jonathan. Very nice to speak to you. I have like 3 quick points.
Go on. You go ahead.
If there was a warship in our waters, we would have sorted it out by now. So by saying if it comes any further south, we'll deal with it. It's not happening. Russian warship is not in our waters, else it should have been dealt with there and then. Number 2, if we've got 70 to 75,000 members of our armed forces, they're not 75,000 fighting people. I'd say 30 to 40,000 of them may be fighting fit if we look at. Now, I know for a fact China have got a combat plane for every man and woman we've got. We could not go to war with China. My old regiment in the British Army hasn't even got enough ammunition to take the lads on the ranges for a day.
Thank you for your service, though, by the way, Scott, if you don't mind me adding. Just thank you for your service.
No, that's okay. They cannot fire 65 rounds each on a range to do their annual personal weapons test for a whole regiment. They can't do that. because they haven't got the ammunition on camp. And as a quick reaction force, if anything kicks off in the world, you're meant to be able to leave the camp and go to wherever the army sends you in 48 hours. We cannot do that.
No.
The British Army, I hate to say, it's a laughingstock.
It must be so depressing, Scott, to see that and feel that way, quite frankly, having bravely served. Because, as you say, the men and women that I've come across are extraordinary. I'm very proud of the fact that
the soldiers, the men, the women, the Air Force, the Navy, absolutely brilliant. You can't knock them. But they can't fight with the equipment they haven't got.
It feels like lions led by donkeys, except the donkeys are the politicians.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's all I wanted to say. And
no, thank you, Scott.
I'd just like to give my respect to everyone who's still serving, everyone who has served, and we love you all, and God bless you, and thank you, Jonathan. Keep up the good work.
No, thank you very much. That's Scott from Leicester there with his call. Very powerful call indeed. And again, to hear another veteran's voice on this channel always makes our hearts grow proudly, because what do we know compared to them? We've also got, finally, Keith in Lincolnshire before we go to our break. Hey, Keith, how are you?
Good afternoon. Well, would be better if we had a change of government. As I just said, there's much possibility of getting an immigration bill through this Parliament, this government, as boiling water in a chocolate kettle. They're actually going to increase immigration because it is known that illegal immigrants are not opposed to lying a little bit. And I can see that immigrants will step off the boat, get to a hotel, say, I'll send me home, I'll go home. Can I have £3,000 now, please?
Well, I think you make a great point. The fact that Shabana Mahmood, Keith, was talking about paying more than the £3,000 per illegal migrant that we currently offer.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be paying them anything.
I agree with you. Detain and deport, Keith. It's simple, isn't it?
Do what? Sorry.
Sorry, I was saying, Keith, detain them, deport them. It's very simple.
Well, yeah, and hopefully we'll follow the Danish example. They're still in the ECHR, but managing to deport people and keeping their immigration down.
Shabana Mahmood, though, is trying to copy the Danish model, Keith.
Sorry?
Shabana Mahmood is trying to copy the Danish model. Do you not give her any credit for trying?
No, I think she's just mouthing words. I don't think she's got any intention of doing what she's saying she's going to do.
Wow.
And, you know, it's just a case of another lie from an underlying government.
Wow. Well, Keith, thank you so much for your call and for sharing your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be one of our great callers or indeed texters or indeed voice noters, I love a voice note. 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, it's how you WhatsApp, and it's how you voice note. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message, and you message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, Sakib Bharti, Conservative MP, going through today's stories. We'll see you soon.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the great Ian Collins here on today's show, and I look forward to speaking to our next guest. His name is Saqib Bharti MP. He covers Meriden and Solihull East, if I remember the patch correctly there, or East, maybe West. He'll correct me in a bit if I'm wrong. No, East. He's shaking his head. It's East. It's East. Hello, Saqib. How are you?
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you've done this in a very... You've been told that you might be voting, you might not be voting. The hokey-cokey of this government continues to carry on.
We are working really hard to hold this government to account. They are a shambles. And, you know, it's very, very clear that as the opposition, we've got an important job to do, and we are determined to deliver for the country.
Saqib, Prime Minister's questions today focused on the economy. Kemi Badenoch, I certainly thought, came out the winner of today's exchanges with the Prime Minister. He even had the audacity to say it was she who was to blame for the speculation in the budget. Do you think is he either just addicted to lying, or is he just is he not in control of anyone? Because clearly, we in the media have only reported what his people are briefing to us.
Two things, first of all. Number one, when you don't believe in anything, you will fall for everything, right? And that's the reality of it. Well, I'm sure there's a saying like that. I probably got it wrong slightly, but you know what I mean. You will fall for anything. And that's what Keir Starmer is. He has no principles whatsoever. And we see that on a weekly basis. And by the way, the public are seeing that. But look, you say that the media are taking their briefings. I know there are lots of good journalists challenging Keir Starmer and that government narrative. And they need to continue doing that. They cannot continue to get away with it. And I'll give you an example. Just last week, Keir Starmer admitted breaking the ministerial code on the football regulator. And imagine if that had been a Conservative Prime Minister. And you know, there's been very, very little. He said it was regrettable. He should come to the House and apologise. We're still waiting for that apology.
Well, should we even have a formal investigation? If this was Boris Johnson, we'd have a whole pantomime all ready to go in order to probably banish him for multiple days, which would therefore trigger potentially a by-election. It's amazing, as you say, the hypocrisy of this Labour government. After the homelessness minister had to resign because she was making her own tenants homeless to rack up rents, we've got the anti-corruption minister having to resign because she's been accused of corruption back in Bangladesh. We have obviously Angela Rayner having to quit as Deputy Prime Minister because she wasn't paying all her stamp duty whilst also being the Housing Secretary. We've obviously had Keir Starmer refreshing, I think, his communications team now on 4 different occasions because there's only a comms problem. We have a Chancellor who's bursting into tears on the front bench but claims it's not, but whilst also not signing up to the regulations that she campaigned for in her constituency in her London luxury home. I mean, it's a shambles, isn't it, Saqib? I mean, you must just be so frustrated sat there watching this go on.
Well, Jonathan, first of all, Kemi absolutely skewered Keir Starmer today, right? She called him out on what his Chancellor, his appointed Chancellor, had been saying before the election, at the budget. You know, this is what we have to do. And, you know, it is a difficult situation because we come into every day and all we want to do is serve the country. That's what the Conservatives stand for. That's what we care about. And this government, which is clearly, as you pointed out, despite all the rhetoric, you know, despite all the pontificating and the moralising, the reality is they've not been able to deliver. They came to government without a plan. In fact, I talk about not delivery. It's worse than that. They've lied about CV qualifications. There was a fraud conviction you forgot about when you mentioned
the Transport Secretary. Yes.
We forgot the donor gate.
Lisa Nandy. She had
into Lord Ali paying for Keir Starmer's suit and for his wife's suits, all that kind of stuff. You know, as they took away pensions, winter fuel allowance from pensioners, as they are making energy bills higher, they're making the cost of living higher. And he had the nerve to laud the inflation figures falling today to 3.6%, while food inflation is through the roof. And as one Conservative MP pointed out to me, Rachel Reeves did all her interviews today from a cafe, right? She should ask those cafe owners and the people who are buying that food what the cost of that food is right now. Because I bet you one thing, she does not know whatsoever what the average person on the street, the real person, the real Brit, is living right now. And that's what the Conservatives are fighting for. We're fighting for them.
Well, I think that was very well said indeed. Very punchy, very powerful, and very much needed to be said. Saqib, you are a businessman with your financial background. You obviously, I think you and a family member have a small sort of firm in Birmingham. So you are dealing with helping people with their finances. You know, therefore, more than most, what the speculation of this budget, the hokey-cokey nature of U-turns on U-turns when it comes to income tax, has done in terms of damage-wise. And now we've got Rachel Reeves saying that she's happily going to allow another £6 billion increase in welfare by increasing working age benefits by 3.8%, whereas in previous Conservative governments chose to froze those in order to obviously try and redress the country's finances. This does not include the proposed or rumoured increase by the two-child benefit cap being lifted, and of course I'm sure, and the fact that she's obviously fully given up on just this small £5 billion, when you look at the welfare bill in full, cut that she tried to make her own backbenchers shouted her down over. Britain, this country simply cannot afford this Labour government.
About talkTV, just underneath the screen it says balancing act, Chancellor looks to shield small businesses from tax rises. She's the one who's imposed tax rises on small businesses. The national insurance rise, the jobs tax, has been absolutely devastating for investment. It's been devastating for jobs. It's been devastating for young people. It has killed aspiration. It's killed that kind of animal spirit where if you want to go out and start a business, why would you do so if it's more beneficial for you to go on benefits or whatever it is? She's made wrong decision after wrong decision, and the responsibility lies with Rachel Reeves. It lies with Keir Starmer, and they can try and blame everyone. But Jonathan, you and I both know the electorate is not stupid. They know exactly what is going on, and they were lied to at the last election. This government has not been honest with them. We can see that. Rachel Reeves said she wasn't going to come back for more. She went to the CBI conference and said that in a room full of business people, and guess what? Now when businesses hear her name in dinners, in events, they boo her. And I think that is exactly the right approach. This Labour government is completely out of its depth. Socialism does not prosper, and that is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing student union socialism happening at a national level, and it's doing immense harm. The U-turn on income tax, let me just finish this because I feel very passionate about this. I mean, if this was funny, I'd say it was a comedy. It was comedy hour, but it's not, right? It's tragic. It is doing huge amounts of harm. People have stopped selling houses. Businesses have stopped investing. Everyone is on tenterhooks trying to see what is going on. And to make matters worse, Rachel Reeves chose this date on the 26th of November, which means it's been months and months of speculation, of them briefing things out, trickling out policies, testing them out, failing in them. Their own backbenchers holding her to trying to hold her to account for their socialism, and the bond markets, the real adjudicators of all of this, the bond markets being all over the place on this. It is an absolute travesty, and that's why the Conservatives matter in this conversation.
If Rachel Reeves breaks yet another promise, a promise she made, as Kemi Badenoch pointed out today, from the floor of the House at the last budget, that she would unfreeze tax thresholds from 2028. We're expecting, again, based on speculation, that will continue for another 2 years, so to the end of this Parliament leading into a general election. Rachel Reeves has said herself that this would be harmful to working people, seeing as how Labour already managed to try and play games by claiming that when they hiked national insurance for employers, that wasn't a tax on working people. Rachel Reeves, therefore, raising tax thresholds, surely therefore would be a tax rise on working people. Should she do the honourable thing and resign for breaking another promise?
Absolutely. She should absolutely resign. We've been very, very clear on this. But Jonathan, let's be very, very clear. When we left office, we obviously had that election result. But the fact of the matter is, inflation was at 2%. Businesses were thriving. The economy is is resilient. It's not because of the government it's resilient, by the way. It's because we have great talent in this country. We have great ideas. We have the chutzpah for business people and men and women to go out there and make a life for themselves. The government needs to get out of the way. What Rachel Reeves has done is completely cut them off at the knees, tax them through the roof. And by the way, she's coming back for more. And I said this in January, Jonathan. I was doing an interview and I said she's only got bad option after bad option. The bond markets were already at all-time highs. They've gone higher since then, and she's created her own black hole. The fictitious black hole has become the real Rachel Reeves black hole, and the whole country is going to pay for it.
It's very sad indeed. Saqib, we've also got the fact, and to back you up here, record numbers of Britons left the country in the last year, in the year year Labour was elected amid growing fears about Rachel Reeves's tax plans. 257,000 British nationals in the year ending December 2024, more than 3 times the previous estimate of 77,000, fueled a drop in net migration. Over the 4 years from 2021 to the last year, some 992,000 Britons left the UK, up from the previous estimate of 343,000. Your colleague Andrew Griffiths, the Shadow Business Secretary, has said Labour's economic exodus is in full flight as people flee Rachel Reeves's tax hikes and mismanagement. It's potentially the biggest reverse migration in British history. This was entirely predictable. When you tax something, you get less of it, and now people are voting with their feet. I mean, just how serious do you think we'll see the continuation of a mass exodus out of this country?
Well, I mean, I was on social media earlier. I saw a video of an investor saying that Britain is becoming uninvestable, right? And that is the reality. Or let me. I was tech minister at the back end of the last government. It was a great 6 months for me and for the tech economy. I say that slightly cheekily, but the reality is we were the 3rd most valuable tech economy in the world. We had huge amounts of investment. We had more unicorns than France and Germany combined, and now you're seeing this exodus. What's changed? It's a Labour government. It's a Labour government that's come in without a plan. You mentioned Andrew Griffith. He's got a great history in business. I'm a chartered accountant. We've got huge front bench with huge amounts of business experience, and you've got a front bench on the other side in government, which has to pretend to have business experience. That is the difference. And so, look, the most important thing here is we have to push the government to do better. We have to challenge them as we are doing, and we're the only ones doing that, by the way. You're not hearing anything from the Liberal Democrats, reform. I don't know what their economic policy is. It is just us out there talking about how we incentivize demand in the economy. We want people to start a business. We want young people to know that they don't have to have a life on benefits. There is hope for them. There are jobs. There is aspiration. We don't want them thinking actually we'd have to go halfway across the world to build a life for them and their families. They are the future of our country, and what Rachel Reeves is doing is trying to balance the books on the backs of our future generations, and she's mortgaging them out to be able to pay for her bills today.
We had today, Saqib, the extraordinary scenes of Clive Lewis, MP for Norwich South Labour, say that he would be willing to vacate his seat to let Andy Burnham take over the Labour Party in order by coming into Parliament. We also have this Tribune group of Labour MPs who claim that they have the 80 signatures ready to go to force a challenge, citing names such as Louise Haigh, who, as you said, had to resign in disgrace as Transport Secretary due to a previous fraud conviction. Lisa Nandy, again, who's had to apologise after not declaring a donation from the person she appointed to be the football regulator, and Lucy Powell, who Sir Keir Starmer sacked and then weeks later became Labour's deputy leader. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer's done his interview with The Mirror where he says he'll lead Labour into the next general election. First of all, do you think we will see a challenge in the next 12 months to Sir Keir Starmer? And number two, do you think anyone could do a better job than Sir Keir, or do you think, having lived that experience like I did between 2022 and 2024, Labour can change the face? The problem is the Labour brand is already rotten.
Jonathan, it doesn't matter what I think. Keir Starmer came out last week and his people came out and they accused a sitting cabinet member, a health secretary no less, right, a health secretary, of plotting against him. And then then the health secretary had to defend himself, and then Keir Starmer said he was going to fight for his political life, and then Keir Starmer pretended like nothing had even happened. The whole country watched this happen. They know they are vulnerable. They're paranoid about it. And actually what you're now seeing is exactly what you've said, which is cabinet members are plotting. They are getting the leadership campaigns ready. For me, it's much of a muchness, right? We need a Conservative government in place. We need a Conservative government that understands the economy, which we do, that understands that you have to create jobs by incentivising business. They're the job creators. Government does not create jobs. It does not generate money. It is the wealth creators of this country that do so, small, medium and large, and we have to support them. I'm not sure any new leader of Labour will understand that, but I think their time is numbered? Most probably.
Well, another one today, Saqib, quite extraordinary again, the House of Commons Defence Select Committee, which has a Labour chair in Tandesi MP, has released a report saying that the Labour government is moving at glacial pace in the face of renewed threats from Russia and China, says it's failing to meet its NATO Article 3 defence obligations, and has warned that the country has next to nothing when it came to integrated air and missile defences and lacks a plan for defending the homeland and overseas territories. John Healey then did a press conference letting us know that there is a Russian spy ship in British waters and that if it heads south, it is ready to act, without specifying how we would act, and says that the UK is prepared. How concerned are you? Do you think Britain is actually able to defend itself? Has Labour continuing to hollow out our defence forces and further undermining them with legislation that I know, were voting against along with others regarding the Northern Ireland Legacy Act, that means we will see British veterans once again dragged back to court while IRA terrorists go without ever facing a day in court or prison?
I gave a speech about a year and a half ago, before the election, and I said if Keir Starmer comes into government, it will weaken this country. Right? I still believe that. However, do I think we can defend ourselves? Absolutely. We have a great British Army. We have a great heritage in that. But the government needs to get out the way in terms of making their life harder, as we saw with the Veterans Bill yesterday. They did not do that. They did not understand the implications of what they will do. They undermined our veterans, and I think that was hugely damaging, not just for our historic veterans, but actually our future recruitment. I think that's an issue. I think the fact is John Healey gave that statement. By the way, he should have come to the House of Commons and given that statement there, so we could have questioned him and challenged him. That is the right thing to do. But clearly, you are now in the 21st century. We're in the age of the autocrats. You've got China, Russia, North Korea, Iran flexing their muscles. We have to be robust, and we have to invest to ramp up our defence spending and get there. I think Tan is a really good select committee chair. I think he's the best one, actually. I don't think the Labour select committee chairs hold this government to account sufficiently. I think he's doing that. He's right to push for this because we are entering really, really precarious times. And that's, by the way, fundamentally two things I'd say to you. You have to have a strong economy, which is why Rachel Reeves is contributing to the weakness of the security of our nation. And if she's created a black hole, she's saying 20 billion, maybe it's 30, maybe it's a bit higher than that. Reality is they've just given away the Chagos Islands, and that's going to cost us £35 billion. I can think of many, many ways to spend £35 billion that would help our public services, and not least help the defence of this realm, which is our primary duty. It is one of the most important decisions we will ever have to make if we ever go to war, and we have to be strong and robust because there's only one language that the Russians will understand, and that is the language of toughness.
Saqib Bhatti, Shadow Minister for Education and Conservative MP for Solihull East and Meriden, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a quick break before we come back to Martin Abrahams, Green Party councillor in Streatham. I'll see you soon.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Great Britain. We just have some breaking news coming in. Former Metropolitan Police PC David Carrick, revealed as one of Britain's worst ever sex offenders, has been found guilty of raping a former partner and sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. David Carrick spent years in the Met as a specialist firearms officer before he was exposed as a serial rapist and controlling bully. He was handed 36 life sentences in 2023 after confessing to a catalogue of crimes that include at least 71 sexual offences and 48 rapes. Let's hope this individual never sees the light of day ever again. Let's hope that we put him in some hellhole. Quite frankly, a noose would be the kindest thing for him. We go, however, to our next guest. His name is Martin Abrahams. He's a Green Party councillor for Streatham. Hello, Martin. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jonathan. I'm very good.
Well, thank you for joining us, Martin. I'm quite intrigued now. Clive Lewis, Norwich South, has said that he's willing to vacate his seat to allow Andy Burnham the chance to come back in. The party that came second in Norwich South with a massive 13.5% vote share increase were the Greens. Would the Green Party welcome the ability to challenge this Labour government in Norwich South if the vacancy comes up?
Absolutely. I think there's been various polls that have shown the Greens winning any by-election that would be held in that constituency. So, you know, it'd be pretty reckless of Clive Lewis to trigger a by-election for Andy Burnham, because there's no guarantees that Andy Burnham would win that by-election, and his leadership campaign would be extinguished before it had even begun.
Martin, though, wouldn't Andy Burnham be the type of Labour leader Zach Polansky, your leader of the Green Party, be willing to do a deal with? I know he's ruled out working with Sir Keir Starmer. I think Zach has done a very good job, I must say, at publicising his views and those of the Green Party, albeit I'm sure, Martin, you and I probably wouldn't agree on the specific policies, but fair play. He's lived up to what he said he would do, put the Greens front and centre. But surely Andy Burnham's the type of Labour leader you wouldn't mind, right? You should step aside for someone like that.
Well, you know, the Greens are often polling above Labour at the moment. We've had successive polls where the Greens are polling more than the Labour Party, which shows what an absolute sorry state the Labour Party is currently in under Keir Starmer's leadership. I mean, Keir Starmer is polling the worst personal polling ratings for any Prime Minister in history. And for him to be polling worse than Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak is a pretty spectacular achievement. So Keir Starmer is effectively finished. It's a question of when he will go, not if. Obviously, he's fighting back because the various factions within the Labour Party are trying to figure out who is going to succeed Keir Starmer. Andy Burnham is obviously the candidate that the soft left would like within the Labour Party, but you know the hard right in the Labour Party, those controlled by Morgan McSweeney, probably have different ideas because they absolutely detest Andy Burnham and everything that he would stand for. You know, so there's obviously been talk about wedge streeting, that would just be continuity Starmerism, or Shabana Mahmood is also being talked about as a potential successor, and she's basically been showing what credentials she has over the course of this week in terms of being an authoritarian Home Secretary. But listen, let's be clear, Jonathan. There's three parties there, the Labour Party, Reform and Conservative, that are offering pretty much exactly the same offer to people. And that's why Labour are polling so poorly. Obviously, that's why the Conservatives are polling so poorly. And the risk is that the Labour Party, trying to be kind of reform light, will just usher in a far-right reform government, which you may like, but millions and millions of other people across the country are absolutely terrified of.
Well, Martin, if I may quickly, just because of time, I want to make sure I get your view on this as well, because you rightly point out Labour are indeed hemorrhaging support, as we've seen, to the Greens in terms of voters, but also members as well. It's been quite a tumultuous increase in the vote share for the Greens. But there is now this Your Party, which Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn keep feuding over who's going to lead. I mean, isn't the risk here that they split you guys on the left, and actually wouldn't it just, with the rise of Zach Polanski and the work he's been doing, wouldn't you just rather see Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn join the Greens?
Well, obviously, yes, but, you know, that's not going to happen, in my view, because, you know, they've put a lot of work into this Your Party, which has had a very traumatic birth. But, you know, as Zach Polanski says, we prefer these people to join the Green Party. We've seen a huge Green surge of membership and support over the course of the last few weeks. That's because the Green Party are offering something different to the toxicity and the divisiveness of the Labour Party, Reform and the Conservative Party. But, you know, there is potentially still a place for Your Party in this country, and it's essential that those of us on the left of politics, you know, work together to ensure that there is not a far-right government in this country that scapegoats the most vulnerable in this country, like migrants and asylum seekers, and we have a left voice that says the problem of our country is inequality. The problem of our country is the massive increase in billionaires and billionaire wealth. The 50 richest families in this country, Jonathan, own more than 50% of wealth. You cannot sit here as a presenter on talkTV and say that that is healthy for our society. That is a deeply unhealthy, a deeply unequal society. A little bit of redistribution to make our country more equal, to ensure that people, children, are not going to school hungry, are not going to sleep hungry, and can afford to turn the heating on during cold snaps that we're seeing at the moment, is not a bad thing. You know, we need to have left-wing policies in this country that address the absolute dearth of 45 years of neoliberalism.
Martin, I'm so sorry because of time and because of the ad break, I'm going to have to let you go. But can I promise you that I will get you back on soon, because I would love to debate policy with you. I think you have been very good at laying out your party's arguments, and that is Martin Abrahams, Green Party Councillor for Streatham, joining us there. Well, what do you think? 0344 499 1000 is how you can WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you can text us with the word talk at the start of your message, as well as following a message on X at talkTV. What do you think? The Greens are on the rise. Will you back them? Do you believe Shabala Mahmood will be tough on immigration, or are they just being reform light? I'll see you soon.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. We have one hell of a show still coming up for you. And next, MPs have warned that Britain isn't ready to defend itself. A year-long defence inquiry says Labour is moving at a glacial pace amid rising threats from Russia and China. It has also been said that the UK has next to nothing in integrated air and missile defences, as well as a lack of planning to protect the homeland and overseas territories. Next, Rachel Reeves will uprate working age benefits by 3.8% from next April, adding £6 billion to the welfare bill. Critics note past freezes, and Kane Badenoch warns the welfare trajectory will bankrupt Britain. Labour's also ditched a £5 billion cut and is expected to lift the two-child cap, piling extra costs on the Treasury. That actually means the British taxpayer. Finally, the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners says flags displays are becoming a tool of division and intimidation. Emily Sporrell told the National Conference that surging St George's and Union flags hanging on bridges and street furniture are sowing fear. I think the only tool there is the chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, something that will soon be got rid of. Well, we go to our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, but before I get there, 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. I say all this because I have that big question for you today, which is, if Britain went to war, could it defend itself? Yes or no? I'm quite worried. We have an army the size of 70,000, the smallest since the Napoleonic Wars. It is simply not acceptable. But we go to our next guest. His name is Stephen Millard. He is the Deputy Director of the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, and he joins me to discuss the upcoming budget and the state of Britain's economy. Hello there, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. If we may start with this story again. Rachel Reeves, which I've spoken to listeners about earlier, Rachel Reeves is likely to increase spending on benefits by £6 billion in the budget, despite calls to control the ballooning welfare bill. She will uprate working age benefits by 3.8%, which of course was the inflation figure we had in September of this year. That will, though, kick in from April next year. These working age benefits were frozen in the past and under Conservatives between 2015 and 2019. And Kane Badenoch has said that the Treasury, the trajectory of welfare spending will bankrupt Britain. How serious do you think this is, Stephen?
Well, I think saying the trajectory of benefits is going to bankrupt Britain is going a little bit over the top, if I'm being quite honest with you. 3.8% is quite a large rise, that is for sure. I mean, it's resulting from the fact we've had a high inflation. So in real terms, benefits have not gone up by that much. But obviously an extra 6 billion at a time when Rachel is facing a gap in her against her fiscal rules is not a welcome development for her.
How do you feel about the way this budget's been trailed? You obviously understand economics more than most. Has it been this hokey-cokey, as the Speaker of the House referred to it, with briefings in the paper, U-turns on U-turns, as Kane Badenoch said, when it came to income tax, potential rises now no longer happening, obviously based on the briefings we received last week. Has that caused further uncertainty in the markets?
It certainly caused further uncertainty. I mean, I'm very old-fashioned. I think the idea of a budget is that it's delivered to Parliament, and Parliament are our representatives. They should be the first to see it. So this idea of flying kites and putting out leaks and all that kind of thing, I don't think is good. The fact that one minute there are leaks about tax rises, the next there aren't. I don't think that helps at all. And uncertainty for quite a while has been quite high. It's not good for firms. It's not good for investment. All we can hope is that once the budget actually happens, that it becomes clear exactly what's going on, that firms are much clearer as to the environment that they're facing, and then they can actually get on with their investment plans.
Well, when it comes to firms, Stephen, Rachel Reeves is considering apparently steps to shield small businesses and the self-employed from the sharpest tax rises in the budget after Whitehall was accused of a cultural dislike of entrepreneurs. Insiders believe the budget will again include some targeted protection for small firms, with measures expected on business rates and potentially the employment allowance, a tax break which Reeves upgraded last year in a move worth $7.7 billion. The change carved more than 1 million small employers out of the rise in national insurance contributions, and the Federation of Small Businesses lobbying for it to be uprated in line with the national living wage to preserve its value. Would this be, do you think, a common sense measure that will help Rachel Reeves try and achieve her dream of growth?
Yeah, I mean, small businesses are a big source of growth. You want to encourage their development. You want to encourage them to grow. Taxes can act as a disincentive for that to happening, particularly where there are particular levels at which they come into paying tax. So any support that the Chancellor can give for small businesses to encourage them to grow will help growth generally.
What do you think, what would you like to see? If you were advising Rachel Reeves at this moment in time, what do you think should be happening? Should there be a cut in public spending? Is that what really needs to happen, as the Tories and Reform UK have been advocating for in the run-up to this budget? Or is Rachel right to try and avoid a return, as she says, to austerity, invest in critical infrastructure, more spending on housing and large planning, for small modular nuclear reactors, local infrastructure such as rail and road upgrades that will all help generate growth, but obviously acknowledging the fact that more borrowing heaps more debt onto the British purse?
Yes, I think there should be a bit of both in a way. Let me explain what I mean by that. It is fairly clear that this budget will have to be contractionary. The Chancellor needs to make sure that she obeys her own fiscal rules. If she doesn't, the markets there will be an adverse reaction, and that would not be good for the economy. Much more money would have to go on interest rather than on spending on public services, the things we need. I think it's really important, the continued increase in spending in public investment, in infrastructure, and those kinds of things, because they are what encourages growth. At the same time, there's a lot of current government spending that seems to have gone up quite considerably. And there's a question about whether some of that could be cut, whether some of that is spent on less efficient purposes, shall we say, than the public investment. So I think I'd want to try and increase public investment and pay for it via cuts on current spending, while at the same time I think we're going to have to raise taxes because we have to fill that fiscal gap.
Do you think Rachel Reeves is guilty of hypocrisy in the sense that she did come in and say there was a £22 billion black hole left by the last Conservative government? She is now looking at potentially between 20 and £30 billion black hole, of which some of that is, of course, wanting to give herself more fiscal headroom. Many of our texters and callers here would say that Labour has to take some responsibility for the economic mess it's found itself in. They point to the jobs tax, increase in national insurance for employers that's led to 180,000 now fewer people in payroll jobs than there were before, particularly hitting the hospitality, retail and the leisure sector hardest. Or do you think some of our listeners, and maybe those on the right, centre-right of British politics, which I myself am on, are unfair in our criticism of Rachel Reeves?
Well, starting with the black hole, I think that was a very unfortunate choice of wording. I think there was an issue in that the figures for the previous government didn't quite add up. But I think public finances have gotten worse over the past year. I think that's for sure. Some of which is the fault of a large increase in government spending, in particular in the previous budget. Some of which is the fault of things coming from abroad, the Trump tariffs, etc. I mean, I don't know whether it's hypocrisy. I would say that's the wrong word. But equally, I think a lot of blame is heaped on past governments where, that all happened years ago. The current party's been in power for a year and a quarter now. So you would expect at least some of the problems to have come from their actions. And you pointed to the rises in national insurance. As we said earlier, you know, that is very much likely to hit the small businesses, the ones that you need to be growing if you're going to encourage growth. We did see that. The rise in the national living wage at the same time, that increased costs, particularly again for small businesses. So I think some of the problems have been the result of the Chancellor. I think some of the problems would have been there anyway. So I'd come out a little bit more even, more in the centre, I guess, than the centre right.
No, that's fine, Stephen. And one last one from me is that obviously the Telegraph has run this story about the fleeing from the UK, wealthy people in particular leaving, where we've seen now a departure of 257,000 British nationals in the year ending December 2024, which is 3 times the previous estimate. We see a lot on the centre-right and right of British politics saying that Rachel Reeves is leading to an exodus of wealth in this country. Do you kind of buy that narrative? Is that what you're seeing from an economics perspective? Are we seeing wealthier individuals running out of the country on large unexpected numbers, or is that just a bit of fear-mongering?
Well, I think there's a little bit of fear-mongering, although to be absolutely honest with you, I'm not on top enough of the data to be able to say that for sure. I mean, every year we have quite a few people leaving Britain. Typically, we have many, many, many more people coming into Britain, so net immigration is high. But as I say, there's always people leaving the country. That always happens. There's nothing new there. I think the big issue is who are those people who are leaving the country, and then unless I had a better sight of the data, I wouldn't be able to comment on whether it's the super rich who are worried about paying higher taxes or not.
Well, Stephen Miller there, Deputy Director of the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, thank you so much for joining us and sharing us your views and your expertise ahead of the budget. What do you think? Is Rachel Reeves got to start taking some of her own blame for the state of the public finances? We want to get your views on that. So you do that by calling in 0344 499 1000. You can also WhatsApp us and voice note us on that number too. 87222 is how you text us the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Ollie Shaw's text in. The guy from the Greens, Martin Abrahams, Green Party councillor for Streatham, has put his ideas across well and has some good points. Wealth is very unevenly distributed and it's not fair. Unfortunately, taxes are so high that anyone on PAYE is unlikely to ever be wealthy. And it seems raising taxes is the way the left thinks that will solve that. I had a really good chat there with Martin Abrahams. I was very unfortunate that I didn't leave him the time that I wanted to. We will get him back on, and he and I, I'm sure, will have a good quality debate there. Another one here: if the Green Party ever got into government, the country would fall quicker than what's happening now, which is a slow death. Well, after the break, it's your texts and your calls. Ian from Staffordshire is waiting for me, but let's have that ad break and then let's get that sound Staffordshire voice on these airwaves. I'll see you soon.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance.
I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. Well, we've been having a great array of guests and a great array of opinions, and I want to get your views on them. Do you think it's bad that Britons are fleeing this country? And are you worried it's the wealthiest that are going? Rachel Reeves, do you believe that she'll be able to shield small business from her impending tax rises? And would you like to see her raise or cut the welfare bill? Do you believe Shabana Mahmood will actually deliver on the very strong rhetoric when it comes to immigration? And not only will we see small boat numbers dramatically decline, but we will also see a huge increase in deportations. Would you welcome the left of the Labour Party taking out Sir Keir Starmer and bringing in someone like Andy Burnham? Could he be the saviour of the Labour Party? Do you agree with police chiefs such as Emily Spurrell, the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, that St George's flags are tools of division, or is she perhaps the tool instead? And do you think that Britain is ready to defend itself? Do you think that if we were to go to war, we have the capabilities? We know this morning that John Healey said there is a Russian spy ship in British waters and has acted in a hostile manner towards RAF fighter crews when they've been deployed to intercept. How serious and how scared are you about this? We have one mum, calls herself Worrying Mum in Surrey. My son is in the army and I'm finding things very worrying. I don't know what else to say right now. Another one here texting in, saying that about the flags of the United Kingdom are not intimidating, can never be, for it is our country. However, flags of other countries paraded through our streets designed to intimidate certain sections of our community are for years the police have done nothing to stop it. That's Jenny in Bicester. Couldn't agree with you more, Jenny, on that particular point. The Barry's text in, the UK is too busy defending other Eurozone countries instead of looking up to itself. Another one here from Liz in East Kilbride. I feel it's all too late. This government is systemically destroying us and our great country. We need radical change now. God, I despair. The only thing that gives me strength is my countrymen and women. Fantastic text there. Stuart, a lovely text here from Stuart in Middlesbrough. My son is 15 years and 9 months old today. He's been waiting for this day for months. He has just come home from school and is now sat completing his online application to join the RAF. I could not be prouder. An amazing, focused young man. Stuart from Middlesbrough, I wish your son all the very best. I hope he gets in, and thank you for your son's bravery and willing to serve our nation, and I hope that we look after him. Another one here. Keir Starmer has written and co-written several legal textbooks on human rights, ECHR, etc., for which he still receives royalties. So he has an obvious vested interest in the UK continuing to be in the ECHR. Another one here from Ken in Lancashire. We can't defend our country because we have become weak and woke. Our young people have no fight in them. Sad, but true. Well, let's go to our next caller. It's actually Ian from Bedfordshire, not Staffordshire. I need to get my reading glasses on. Hello, Ian. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. It's great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, Ian. What do you think about everything that's going on? What is it you want to tell us?
Well, I've only just stopped laughing after listening to the Conservative MP you had on earlier.
Saki Barter, yes.
Telling us all about what they should be doing and what Labour should be doing, after the Conservatives spent 14 years gaslighting us and did absolutely nothing with the fake Tories and closet Lib Dems in Westminster. what a load of shower they were.
There is a lot of closet Tories in the Conservative Party when I was in there, I'm sad to say, Ian. I saw them firsthand.
Yeah, and the other thing was listening to Shabana Mahmood. I mean, if anybody believes she's going to do anything about immigration, I've got a London Bridge they can buy if they like. I mean, we had Keir Starmer with his smash the gangs before the election, when all the Labour MPs went round all the media interviews saying they're going to smash the gangs. And it was a load of rubbish. They never intended to do anything about it.
Do you think, out of interest... Sorry, Ian, do you think out of interest that even if they passed all these laws into law, if they get all of this through Parliament, and I think you and I are rightly sceptical of that, but if they do achieve that, do you think we'll still not see these policies actually enacted because they'll just come up against human rights lawyers?
Well, of course they will. Call Keir Starmer's lefty lawyer mates. As soon as it goes through, they'll say the first time they go, we're going to deport this bloke, they'll say, oh, no, you can't. The ECHR says this, and all the judges will agree with them, and the judiciary, who are riddled with lefties, and that'll be it, and it won't happen.
Because Sir Keir Starmer won't stand up to the judges because he's made it clear that he wants to abide by ECHR rulings, along with his best buddy, Lord Hermer, who's his Attorney General.
Exactly that. All this with Shabana Mahmood, all it is an opportunity to kick the can down the road for another couple of years when they can say, well, we're just waiting until this bill gets passed, and we're just waiting to get this put through, and then in 2 years' time they'll say, no, it's not going to work anyway. And it'll just be another waste of time. They're conning us.
Ian, out of interest though, if they do defy our expectations, if they do actually deliver, would you be willing to give Labour another chance?
I'll never vote for Labour again as long as I live. And I was a trade unionist back in the 80s.
Blimey.
And that's right. And as a well-known car plant. But I tell you, I would never vote Labour again in my life. Never. And I'm afraid the Tories have gone the same way. They've lost it forever.
Ian, thank you so much for your call. I'm the team behind the glass are laughing here because I'm trying to carry on from yesterday's conversation, seeing if anyone's going to give Labour a chance. And even if Labour actually do anything about it, people still aren't going to back them. I don't know what to do anymore. But Andrew in Hertfordshire is on the line. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Really good. Cracking show. You started off really well. Look, in relation to this business with the Troubles and the army people.
Yes.
The IRA, and I'll spell the name for you, they killed a 6-month-old baby, and the surname is Islania, shot in the head by the IRA, and her father was shot at the same time. Tony Blair gave the people that did that a letter that said nothing will happen to them.
Disgusting, isn't it?
And he deceived Parliament when he said he'd signed a Good Friday Agreement. What he did was he appeased the terrorists. And Starmer and Herman are desperate to do the self-same thing. And it's the same as the people that are outside migrant hotels. They've lost faith in the system. That's why they're out there. And the army has lost faith in the government. We're doomed because we have an army that can't fight for us because we don't believe in justice anymore. We're finished.
Are you, like me, Andrew, repulsed at the fact that this Labour government is trying to introduce legislation that basically would rip up what the last Conservative government did? And I'm not saying the Conservative government was perfect, but I think on that last piece of legislation, the Legacy Act, it was right to say, look, it's time to draw a line in the sand. The IRA have already been given the exemptions and the free passes. It's time to stop seeing British soldiers, veterans, in their 70s and 80s dragged into court to face vexatious claims. And the right thing that should be done is allow Northern Ireland to move on from its ugly past. But I'm amazed this Labour government wants to rip up that legislation because, lo and behold, Sinn Féin as a political party and others were saying, we don't like this. Well, of course they're going to say that, because they fuel off the votes of those people who want to say that the Troubles were all the fault of the British Army, despite the fact that overwhelmingly over 90% of the crimes that were actually committed were by terrorists, IRA terrorists.
And it is funny the language you used there. Why use the word Troubles? That was a terrorist campaign, the same as Hamas and Hezbollah.
Yes, so true.
This BBC word that was invented that everybody seems to brush under the table. Look what they did to those people in Manchester.
Yep.
That couple that were walking in Wales that happened to cross them bringing arms in and killed them. Come on. They were butchers and murderers, and we value them more than our soldiers. And it's at the core of Labour, because Labour hates Britain and it hates British people.
Andrew, you're right to call me out on that. Like you say, I've been programmed to refer to it in that way, but you're right. It was a terrorist atrocity that was taking place, and we sent in our armed forces to stop the terrorists from winning. You were completely right. Thank you. That's Andrew from Hertfordshire there sharing his views and his thoughts. We've also got other texts coming in here. Another one saying, afternoon, Jonathan, all respect to you as a Conservative man yourself. There is only one party to save our country from the ruin and degradation that currently occurring, and that is Reform UK. In spite of your guest, Saki Bharti, saying the country needs the Tories to sort out our mess, I'm afraid it's the Tories that have gotten us into this terrible place we are now, and they were not much better than the Labour shell we currently have. That's from Rob in London there. Being very much the same words that Andrew and others have said. We've also got another caller, Zach in Leeds. Hello, Zach, how are you?
Hi there, I'm doing very well today. Just before I begin, good work on the show.
Thank you so much. It means a great deal. Thank you. And how are you? What do you think about everything you're hearing, especially on defence right now? Are you worried the fact we've got Russian spy ships in British waters?
Absolutely, I am worried, but also I think the government's missing something here, because yes, this is a threat, but let's take it as an opportunity. Let's get our defence sector going again. Britain, not even that long ago, 30 years ago, the Americans were buying Harriers from us.
Yep.
And now, we hardly manufacture any kind of heavy defence equipment, really. Let's use it as an opportunity. The government can use all kinds of incentives to get that industry kicking. And I think there's loads of opportunities for jobs, for investment, and also for exports as well. Something has to give. We can't continue going down this path of cutting budgets, especially in defence, where it's the only budget where, that money is circular and is kept in the UK, is invested in British soldiers, in British companies. Let's kind of expand that bucket.
The deindustrialisation of this country is an absolute disgrace, isn't it, Zach?
Absolutely, and, it gets to a point where it affects the financial services as well, because there's no companies that need those financial services. So
Indeed.
You need a strong industrial base that then relies on the financial services that the city can provide. Without that, foreign countries, they don't really, once they've developed their own industry, they can quickly develop their own finance as well. And then what are we going to do?
Great points that you've made there. That's Zach and Leeds. Thank you so much. Well, if you want to be like one of our great callers and texters, you know what you need to do. 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp us, call us and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, we'll be discussing police chiefs saying St George's flags are tools of division. Or is it that the police chiefs here are the tools, actually? I'll see you soon.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis here in for Ian Collins. Not long now until Peter Carwell at 4 p.m. takes over at drive time, taking you through to 7 p.m. So get ready to join in for another great show that you'll be having soon. But we go to our next guest. His name is Councillor John Edwards. He's an independent councillor that covers Sandhurst, and he is here to talk about what police chiefs have been saying about the St George's and Union flag. Hello, sir. How are you?
Yes, good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good indeed. Now, how did you feel when you read, just so people know, Emily Spurrell is the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. Thankfully, this Labour government said they're going to get rid of police crime commissioners. I'm hoping this group will also disappear into non-existence. But she told a national conference that a surge in St George's and Union flags being hung on lampposts, motorway bridges and street signs across the country was sowing fear and fueling division. I mean, really? Do you think that's the case, John?
No, and it felt, you said how it made you feel at the start, and it made me familiar because in my area, loads of flags went up and the council ripped them all down the next day, and then they went back up again, and politicians were calling them divisive, so the rhetoric sounded very familiar. But my point is that, you know, they're doing nothing wrong. You know, one, this is our national flag. That cannot be divisive in itself. But two, yes, these people are flying them to protest. They're protesting against policy, immigration, mass immigration, illegal immigration, you know, national identity. And that's fine in itself. And if you look at the stark contrast, it's no different to how pride flags get flown, Palestinian flags get flown, or even the EU flag in anti-Brexit rallies. You know, they were about protest and they were about identity, but yet no politicians or police called them devices or, you know, tools of intimidation. So I think the contrast and the, you know, is what's really noticeable here and upsetting, actually.
Well, I agree with you, John. I mean, I'm sick to the back teeth of the Palestine flag being flown everywhere because it is being used as a tool of intimidation. It isn't an actual nation state. It's now a political symbol that obviously is hijacked because Hamas runs Gaza. People were happily waving it on hate marches that were taking police resources from all parts of the country at the weekends in order to allow these to go on. But like you say, it's amazing how I didn't hear Emily Spurrell say anything. I don't think I could find anything. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to correct myself. But she said nothing when it came to Palestine flags flying all over the place, including lampposts in parts of communities. I've certainly seen that in bits of Birmingham. But yet the St George and Union flag goes up and, oh, it's the same old, this is racism, this is the far right. No, as you say, it's patriotic Brits saying you ignored us for decades. We told you in 2016 we wanted Brexit, and it took until 2019 for you to actually enact that. Then we told you that we wanted to take control of our borders, and it was a Conservative government that failed on that. And this Labour government continues to gaslight us and telling us they're smashing gangs, yet we're seeing record numbers come over. And like you say, this has just become a point now where the British people are saying enough is enough. Listen to us and do something, and then we will go on with our lives. But until then, this is the only way we can grab your attention.
Yeah, and that's quite an interesting point you made, is the Palestinian flag, you know, not always, but, you know, it can be a sign of hate, especially with, you know, if you're linking it to Hamas, whereas our flag stands for freedom and democracy and liberty. And you also said that the politicians are linking it to the far right. They're saying it's the far right. But there's no central organisation here. That, you know, these flags have gone up spontaneously around the country. There's no joint manifesto. So I think it's and there'll be loads of reasons. So I think it's really unfair that yet again politicians are just labelling people with loads of opinions and doing this for loads of reasons as sort of driven by malice or racism. It's so offensive. And the only thing actually they show is that all these people flying the British flag feel unheard. That's the main thing.
I get really bored of people saying, oh, but we need to reclaim the flag from the far right. No one, like you say, no one owns the flag. Who are we reclaiming the flag from? It belongs to all of us in this great nation of ours. And I say that as someone who doesn't care what your gender, what your race, what your ethnicity, what your religion, what your sexuality is. If you're a British citizen, or if you're someone who's come over to this country and is here on indefinite leave to remain, maybe one day wants to gain British citizenship, as long as you understand our values, our vision as a nation, respect them as I would respect them in your country, then I've got no issue with anyone or anything being in this country. But the fact that there's always this, has to have this almost an apology, because in history we had an empire. Well, yes, we did, but so did Turkey. So did other parts of the Middle East. So did France. So did Portugal.
I would go one step further. I'd say the empire was actually, it's obviously nuanced, but I would actually say it's a good thing.
It was. Democracy spread, transport spread, education spread. Without those things, let's be quite frank, would India have the rail infrastructure, the education and the democracy it has without the British Empire? Would that be the case in Jamaica and other parts of the world too? Yes, there were ugly parts to history. There's always ugly parts to history. But the truth of the matter is we don't hang what the Nazis did over Germany's head the entire time. We've allowed Germany to move on from its terrible past. Why is Britain always made to feel bad for what our ancestors did, even if they were ancestors? Like you say, I've got no family who were in the slave trade. I'm sure you don't too either.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's such a long time ago. I don't know. But, I lived in Greece in 2018 for a bit. And the idea that I could go over and go and say, I find your flag rather offensive, actually. Could you take them down? And the thing is, knowing the Greeks, I know exactly what they would say to me as well. And I think we just need to just say, actually, no, they're not offensive and they're staying up, quite frankly.
No, indeed. And what do you think, people like Emily Sparrow, do we need to tell these people to just get back in their box? I mean, what I also didn't like is yesterday the head of the National Police Chiefs Council, which is Gavin Stevens, said he too was concerned about division in society, but described the display of flags as an issue for local communities, adding, it's not for us to police flags. I mean, that's a step in the right direction, but what I don't like is they're still fence-sitting here. Why is it that people in charge of the National Police Chiefs Council, I know loads of bobbies, I'm sure you do too, they're very proud patriots. They put their lives at risk for our safety. They have our flag on their uniforms when they go into the front line of duty. They're doing what they can to keep us as a country safe. And it's always the bosses. It's always the bosses that undermine, in my opinion, the people on the ground who are the sensible, level-headed individuals.
Well, obviously the police, are very brave, and we call them as soon as we're in a scary situation. And I agree with you there. It is coming from the top. So yes, that comment is a step in the right direction. But why are they doing it? It's because they're political activists.
Yeah.
It's not impartial policing; it's political policing. And I think that what's really important to recognise here is that, even if you want to call this a protest, this is a protest against policy. It's a protest against immigration policy, illegal immigration policy, national identity. It's not about people. It's not targeting people.
Yep.
These flags aren't being erected in certain areas or outside certain religious buildings. They're just going up down residential streets or high streets.
Yep.
And the police should be absolutely categorically clear and make a statement that protesting against migration policy is not illegal and it's not wrong, and we definitely won't be policing it.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you, John Edwards there, councillor in Sandhurst, independent councillor. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views. Well, what do you think about the accusation that these flags are being used as a tool of intimidation? Do you agree with Emily Sparrow, the chairwoman of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, or do you think she's just the tool herself? 0344 499 1000 is how you can call us. You can WhatsApp us, and how you can voice note us. 87222 is how you text us at talkTV. And, of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, let's go to one of our great callers. She is Shirley. She's from the Cotswolds, not far from where my brother and sister-in-law live. Hello, Shirley. How are you?
Hello, Jonathan. Yeah, we've got your brother and us have got a lovely day over here today.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Well, what do you think about Starmer staying in power? Lots of talk still that he is under threat, despite the fact he claims he will lead Labour into the next election.
Jonathan, do you know what all of this has made me think? The Labour government have got this country, it's complete carnage living here under Labour. Every day is a miserable day when you wake up and realise that we've still got them in power. But what it really has brought home to me is just how the Tories are starting to look more pathetic than I ever thought they were.
Oh, wow.
They completely, after Boris Johnson got booted out because of the cake birthday party, even though Starmer and Rayner were all at it up in County Durham, where I'm from, having curry in a pub, they managed to crawl out and get away with that. And the Tories completely folded. The Tories have got rid of anyone who committed the slightest crime. And here we are. I mean, we had a succession of leaders after Boris, and they just kept getting rid of them, just on the Labour shouting, resign, resign. And of course they did. They just completely folded. And now we've got this government who are criminals. The amount of them, Rayner, Lucy Powell, they've all got the sack and they're all coming back. And how is this happening when it never happened with the Tories? The Tories just crumpled and went.
Out of interest, though, Shirley, obviously the Conservative Party is under new leadership. Kemi Badenoch has acknowledged the mistakes that the Conservatives made in the past. Are you being won over by her? Are you impressed by her? Is there any way you could consider the Conservatives going forward if it means there's the way to beat Labour, or do you think the Tories still have to go away and lick their wounds?
No, the Tories have got to go, and Kemi Badenoch might be a very nice, civilised lady, but she's not strong enough, and we see that week in, week out. Prime Minister's questions is an utter disgrace, and I think that Jenrick could be a good leader, but what I want to see really, and I'm sure it won't happen till closer to the time, I'm going to be voting Reform. There's no two ways about it. They're the only party speaking for civilised, sane people in this country. And I definitely want Reform to hook up with the Tories, but I want the Tories to get rid of all the lefties and wets before that happens. But yeah, I think Jenrick is the potential leader there. I think Kemi is she's on borrowed time.
Well, thank you very much there, Shirley from the Cotswolds, for that call. If you want to be like Shirley and call in 0344 499 1000, how you can do that. You can also WhatsApp and voice note us on that number too. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the starting message. And you can follow us and messages on X at talkTV. After the break, we'll be going through more of your texts and calls, but I want to apologise. It's not Peter Cardwell. I don't know how I got it wrong. It's Kevin O'Sullivan who's taking you through on Drive Time. So he'll be joining me in the last segment before I hand over to him to take you through 4 till 7 tonight, so make sure you carry on tuning in. I'll see you soon.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the home of Common Sense, and I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for Ian Collins, which on Talk, and I'm delighted to be taking more of your texts and calls before we hand over to Drive Time with Kevin O'Sullivan, who will do a fantastic job. Let's see some of the texts that we've had in so far. Julian from Coventry. If anyone in this country finds or thinks our flag is divisive or frightening, then I think these people are the danger, as they clearly don't like our country. End of. Agreed. Oh, God, I love talking to you lot. Shimmy has texted in here, as Shimmy's the WhatsApp name I've got. Fight with Russia, lol. Can't even defend ourselves from the dinghies. If Russia wants to attack Great Britain, it'll be nuclear, and I'll be running towards the missiles. Well, blimey. There's something for you. Dan from Kent texts in, makes me laugh when Labour bang on about the £20 billion black hole. The black hole was caused by the Tories' dreadful decision to pay people to stay home during COVID and stop the economy. But Labour needs to remember they wanted to go harder and faster during lockdown. Fiona's text in, why do MPs not complain about PMQs? It's a joke and switching more people off. Do these MPs forget the voters are watching and seeing their game playing, questioning and bullying? The Lib Dem MPs who surround reform are seen and heard clearly. It's an embarrassment to our democracy. Steve from Tenbury Wells, flags are not the tools of division. Thousands of illegal migrants and this government's support of them actually is. Another one here from Sue. With regard to the police chiefs and the national flags, I would like to add that if we are on a war footing, the national flags will be used to encourage our young men and women to fight for their country. You can't have it both ways. Aubrey from Upminster. So Keir Starmer says that he will lead the Labour into the next general election. I think this is that is a credible statement, but only if he calls that general election before next May. Well done there. And then another one, the government says they work for the British people, but can you answer me when or where we were ever consulted on wind and solar projects, how much we paid to send illegals home, and everything else that we're being sucked in to pay for their mishaps? Strong views there. Well, let's go to our callers. Liam in Bedfordshire has views on defence. Hello, Liam.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan. Great show as ever.
No, thank you so much, sir. What do you think about the defence of our realm?
No, I've got confidence in the individuals within the armed services. They will do everything in their power to protect this great country without doubt. My question is a slightly different one, though. It's, does the political leaders of this country have the stomach or the fortitude to lead us through that conflict?
You'd have to say no, wouldn't you? You'd have to say no, Liam, wouldn't you?
The struggles we see day to day, I've got yes, no, exactly the answer.
It's deeply sad, isn't it?
Sorry, they'll be putting out to public opinion. What should we do next?
No, I agree with you. And Liam, actually, look, I fell in love with politics because my parents always talked to me about the news and what was going on, and I always saw politicians coming up on the screen. Look, I was a child through the Blair years, right? But at least when I looked at the Blair years, I saw the likes of David Blunkett, Robin Cook, even Blair and Gordon Brown themselves. Whilst I had fundamental disagreements with many of the things they said, at least I thought they were, politicians that I think you could look at and go, there's a bit of substance to them. Look back further to Thatcher, Churchill, even Clement Attlee, whatever people think. He was an old school Labour guy who said, if you've got a council house, it's your responsibility to look after it, keep your front lawn tidy, make sure your front doorstep is painted nicely, because it's a privilege to be given this opportunity at the benefit of the taxpayer. Again, disagree with his type of politics, but at least there were some people of substance. I look now and I think, as a voter, out on the outside of politics, and I listen to what my wife and my friends say, they just look around, they see no one of any real credibility other than, they say, Nigel Farage, who at least has been very consistent.
Yes, I think, look, someone like Nigel Farage would certainly lead, I think, during a conflict of that type, if it were to ever happen. But you can't see a Starmer or a Lammy or, quite frankly, any of the front bench of the Labour Party being able to...
David Lammy, God help us.
And give us confidence that we've got a chance of winning.
Imagine David Lammy doing an address to the nation. God almighty.
Oh, please no.
I might surrender.
Might be easier.
It might be easier. Well, Liam, thank you so much for your call there. Really appreciate it. We have another caller, John from Crewe, ironically, where I parked the car this morning to come down to London, Crewe station, not far from the house. Hello, John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm quite well. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
the reason I'm ringing, I'm coming to the conclusion, Jonathan, that we could well be heading for a general election next year. 3 good reasons for it as well. The first one, you've got to understand why the Conservatives called an election early, and it could be for the same reason as that. If you go back 2 years ago, I managed to get a bet on the election for reform at 800 to 1. I did try to get a bet when they were 1,000 to 1. I'd never been in a bookies before, but I went into a town that you will know well, called Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Yes, indeed.
Right, and I asked what the odds were. They didn't know, and I said I want to bet on reform. And they said the same, both of them. How do you spell it? They'd never heard of reform. But I did get a bet with an Irish company, 800 to 1. Great bet. And don't forget this. The Tories could have hung on until January of this year.
Yep.
Why did they go early, Jonathan? Why did they call the election for July? Do you know?
My view is, and this is a fair question, John, was that there was the prison crisis and Rishi Sunak didn't want to have to release prisoners from prison early. They didn't really believe the leadership of the party they would actually get a plane off to Rwanda, even though I disagree with them, because I told them relentlessly, if you get a court saying don't do it, like the ECHR, ignore it, just get the plane off the ground, have the row once those illegal migrants are in Rwanda. And I think those two, and they also felt there was so much infighting and division that the party was fundamentally just broken.
I don't believe that's the truth. Nobody seems to point to this. The main reason, I believe, is this. They realised in the spring of last year, or even before, knocking on doors, that the Reform Party could wipe them out. Everywhere they went, people were turning to Reform. They knew they were going to lose the election, so what they decided is, we will try to strangle Reform at birth. And they did it by calling it early, thinking maybe Reform will get no seats, in which case that would have maybe been the end for a long time of Reform. So they called it early entirely to finish off Reform. There are 2 other reasons, if we've got time, why I think we could have an early election.
Well, David, unfortunately, I'm going to... sorry, John, The only reason I'm going to have to interrupt is because I do want to squeeze in one more caller, but I want to thank you for your call, and obviously I will make sure I get you on next time to hear more of your reasons. But thank you, John from Crewe, for that call and for sharing your views. David is in Essex. I want to make sure I get David's call in too. David, I think you're saying you're repping Kemi Badenoch. You're going to come to her defence.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about your radio station. You seem to be giving Tories a real hard time. Kemi Badenoch's taken over. She's doing a great job. And the way she comes across, I watched her last night on her news conference, and I also watched old Farage as well.
Yeah.
And he looked like an old man in a grey suit, past his time, past his sell-by date. You listen to Kemi Badenoch and what she was saying last night at her press conference. She was hitting all the right buttons. She was saying, get rid of red tape, get rid of welfare, cut welfare, lower taxes, help small businesses like my business. She was saying all the right things. She was saying all the right Thatcherite things.
Do you think the problem for Kemi is, David, sorry to interrupt quickly, do you think the problem for Kemi, though, is it's not her, it's the brand that's so badly damaged?
Look, that brand was damaged. But what did they do before they got damaged? They sorted out COVID. They had a war. They paid people to sit at home and do nothing. They looked after people. So no wonder we got into problems. But people have got short memories. They loved them when they bailed them all out. And then when things got tough, they chucked them out of office. That's just ridiculous. And now look what you've got. Now look what people have voted for. What a joke this lot are. You've got, you give Kemi Badenoch a chance. She's a young woman. She's bright. She's got good ideas, and I'll tell you what, your station is to blame as well because you give no airtime to her. You're all for reform, and I think I just think we've got a great opportunity to elect a really strong leader in Kemi Badenoch.
Well, David. to challenge you on that, I am still a Conservative Party member. I've had 2 Conservative MPs on today, so I try to make sure that we always get Conservative voices and a former Conservative Special Advisor.
Yeah, I'm not saying your programme past because I haven't heard you very much on Talk. But in general, I'm talking about.
No, I get you.
You get the Tories on, and then 2 minutes later, you're slagging them off, saying they've got no chance. What a waste of time they are. But it's Kemi Badenoch. He's talking sense, and you've got to give her the chance to put her views, and you not rubbish her. She's an intelligent woman, and I reckon I know people will say, "Oh, it's the Tories." But it's probably the Labour bloc won't vote for the Tories because they just can't stomach it.
Well, David, thank you for your call there. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who've texted and called in throughout the show. We are going to have Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan taking you through on Drive Time today, and he joins me now in the studio. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Gullis. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. I just had a strong defence there from David in Essex for Kemi Badenoch. He was telling Talk off, saying that we give the Tories too a harder time, that we should believe in Kemi more than Nigel.
I think she's improving. She's on an upward arc. I think she's got a way to go.
I think the Tory brand is the problem that she's facing more than her.
I think it is. When are you switching to Reform? Come on, come on.
Everyone likes to be a troublemaker on this question.
Let's get an exclusive.
No. I'm enjoying sat here and being an armchair moaner and groaner.
We're going to kick off with this Russian spy ship. And I thought that the Defence Secretary, John Healey's tough-talking words were very impressive. We know what you're doing, Putin. And let me tell you, we're ready. Well, the thing is, John, we're not.